Alright guys, welcome to part 6 of the series. We're going to be taking our project management system to the next level. From handling project attachment to fully integrating a dynamic Kanban board with real-time task updates, drag and drop functionality, and automatic task organization. This is where everything begins to come together. So by the end, you're going to have a board that feels seamless and interactive, just like a top tier project management tool. So without wasting my time, let's dive right in. All right, guys, so welcome back. So now I'm on the project detail page, and the name of the project is Create an Admin Dashboard. So when you scroll down here, we have project files. So these are the files that are related to this particular project, and we want to give the users the ability for them to upload files onto the project. Okay, so to do that, you're going to have to come into the project and then open the project models. Inside the project models, you're going to have to create another model. So I'm just going to do class, and the name of the class is just going to be attachment like this. And now it's going to inherit from models.model like this. Okay, so now that we have this, we first of all want to get the project. So you say project, and this project is just going to be models.foreign key like that. And now it's just going to be associated with the project model like that. After this, we want to have on delete. So when the project is deleted, we want to delete its attachment. So we say models dot, and we do cascade like that. From there, we also want to do related underscore name. That is when we get a project, we can do that particular project dot attachment attachment. That is going to give us all the attachments associated with this project. So I'm also going to copy this, come down here, and then paste it one more time. And now this is going to be user. So the user who is actually doing the upload. So it's just going to be on the user model like this. On delete, we're going to cascade it. And then the related name is also going to be attachment. So when we get this particular user, we can do the user.attachment, and it's going to give us all the attachment this particular user has uploaded. All right, so from there, the next field is just going to be the file. So the file we want to upload, and it's just going to be models dot, and that is going to be file sort. So we're going to have our file sort here. All right, so now that we have our file sort, we're going to have upload to. So that is going to be the location we want to upload this particular file to. All right, so we have to specify a location. Now I'm just going to write a custom function to do that. So if you remember very well, at the beginning of our project, we actually did that in the accounts models, the profile models. So I'm just going to open that one and come here. Then I'm going to copy the profile image upload location. Then I'm going to scroll to where we have our models. And then at the very top, I'm just going to paste it like this. So instead of profile picture location, I'm just going to do project file, project, then I'm going to do file location like that. And here, instead of profile image, I'm just going to do project, maybe attachment path location. And this is actually going to take instance and then the file. So here we want to get today's date, and that is going to be datetime.now. And we are just going to pass this format. So we have to make sure that datetime is imported. So I'm going to scroll to the very top, and we don't have datetime imported. So we're going to have to import datetime. So to import datetime, it's just going to be from datetime import. So I'm going to bring a comma here and say date time like this. Perfect. So now that we have imported data, I'm going to scroll down again, and then so we now have this. All right, so here we have to upload it to attachments like this, and then the rest is just going to be instance. Instead of instance the user.username, you're going to do instance.project dot name. So you're gonna get the name of the project like this, and now we have the today's date and then the file name. Perfect. So now that we have this, I can now just come here and then copy this function, and then the upload location, I'm just gonna set it to this particular function like that. All right, like that. All right. So right after this, you also want to have uploaded at, so that is the time or the date this particular attachment is uploaded. So you're gonna have uploaded at, and that is when it is uploaded. So it's just gonna be models dot, and it's just gonna be date time field. Okay. So from here, we're gonna have auto now add. It's just gonna be true. So that is when we do the upload, it's just gonna add the dates and then the time where the upload, when the upload actually happened. And from there, we're gonna have to override the str dunder str method. So it's a str, and it's actually gonna take self like this. Okay, so now what we want to return is just gonna be an f string of, so we're gonna say attachment by, and now we want to get the name of the person who did the upload. So you say self.user.username like this. And now that we have this, we also want to say on, and then we're gonna get the date, the name of the project. So we're gonna say self.project.name like that. All right, so this actually is just gonna be the string we want to return for our str, the dunder str. So I'm just gonna save changes like this, bring up my terminal, and now I need to make migration. So I can now do python manage.py make migrations like this, and we wait for the migration to be written, and then we're gonna do python manage.py migrate to permanently write these changes to our database. So we wait for this to be written, and now it seems everything is written to the database. So from here, I'm just gonna come and then copy attachments like this, come into our admin, and where it says from .models import project, I'm also gonna import attachment, and now I can do admin.site.register, and we want to register the attachment model. So I'm just going to paste it over here, bring up my terminal, check to see if everything is running, and now everything is running perfectly. So I'm just going to refresh like this. We don't have any error, but I want to go into the admin page. So admin like this, and now hopefully we should see our attachments model. So I'm going to scroll down. So now we have attachment here. So I'm just going to click on it and come back here. So I'm just going to select a project we are actually on. Let me check the project we are working on. So we have create an admin dashboard. So click here, create admin dashboard right here. And then the user is just going to be Gentech. So we have Gentech right here. All right, so I'm just gonna click here, and now I'm just gonna go onto my system and then look for pictures. So I'm gonna go into pictures and then probably go to screenshot. I have some screenshots over here, so I'm just gonna click on this one and then click on save. So now this attachment has been added for this particular project. I'm just also gonna add another one. Click and then come to create admin dashboard, and this time around, let's say it was made by, okay, so still Gentech. I'm gonna come here, open, and then select another picture from here and then click on save. And now we have two attachments. So now we need to display this attachment on our project detail page. So I'm gonna scroll down here, and I'm also gonna bring up my test editor. So we're gonna have to go into projects, and then inside our template we're going to go into the project detail. So I'm going to toggle into a full screen like this. I'm going to search for project files. So now that we have project files, it's actually a list, and we want to display only one. We only need one, so I'm going to collapse the rest. So this is the one that I want to maintain, then the rest I'm just going to collapse them like this, and I can delete everything right here. So let's save changes bring up our browser, and then I'm gonna refresh. So we are expecting to see only one. Perfect. We only have one, and now we're gonna have to loop through this. So I'm just gonna go back here, and then I'm just gonna do 4. All right, so I'm just gonna do 4, and we're gonna say for attachment in, then we're gonna say project.attachment.all. So we're gonna do project.attachment.all. So that is gonna get us all the attachments. So attachments.all. So that is gonna give us all the attachment. And now I can just cut the end of the for loop here and then wrap it around this particular part like this. Okay, so at this point, the href here, we're gonna put, so let's get the path of the URL for this particular one. So it's just gonna be attachment like this, and we're gonna have the file .url. So when you come into our model, we have .file, then we're gonna get the URL like this. So that is actually gonna get us the URL for this particular attachment. And then I'm also gonna bring a target here. I'm gonna do target, and essentially what I just want to do is when you click on it, I don't want it to open in the same tab. I just want it to be open in another tab. So I'm just gonna do _blank like this, and that is gonna make sure that it opens in another tab. From there, we also gonna have to come here, and then we want to get the name of the file. So what I'm gonna do is to wrap this one like this, and then we're gonna do attachment dot file dot name like this. So that is going to give us the name of the file. So let's save changes and see what we have so far. I'm just going to come here. When I refresh, I'm expecting to see all the 2 files being loaded here. So we have this first one and then the second one. The reason why we are seeing it to be plenty over here is the length of the name of the file. So what I'm going to do is to actually truncate this file name. So I'm going to come to where we have the file name. Then I'm going to bring a pipe and we do truncate cars, and that is just going to be 40. So let's save changes, come here, and then refresh, and this one should be truncated. So we have 1 and then 2 over here, and it's also showing the icon for Word, and this is not a Word document. So what I'm going to be doing is to come to where we have fa-word. I'm just going to do it fa-file like this, and then save changes, refresh to take off this particular icon. So this is what we have so far. Now when you click on this, it actually opens it in a new tab instead of this. So that is because we said blank, the target, we say _blank is equal to true. All right guys, so this is how to display the project attachment on the project detail page. So I'm just gonna see you in the next video. All right guys, so in the previous video we were able to list the project file. So now people can actually add files to the project, but then they have to be admin members to be able to do that. But we don't want to do that. We want to give every user the ability to be able to add project files to this particular project, the project that they are team members of. All right, so what we want to do is to be able to click on add files, and that is going to open a model. So on this model, we will be able to upload our project file. So inside our template, we have a number of models over here. So we have model example, we have launch default model, and all of this. So when you click on each, you're just going to see the style of the model. But what we want to target is the launch default model. All right, so I'm just going to go into my text editor and then code editor, and then scroll to open the pages folder. Inside the pages, we have a UI, and I'm just going to click on the models like that. All right, so we are actually looking for launch default model. So I'm gonna have to come here and then search for launch default model like that. So we have the default model. So I'm just gonna copy it, then go back onto our project details like this, and where we have the add files, this is an href. We don't need href for that, so I'm just gonna come here and then paste it over here. So this is actually a button, and the href, I don't need it, so I'm just gonna comment it out. But just so that we have the same styling of the button as the href, just like how the template is, I'm just gonna have to replace this one over here and then paste it like this. So I'm just gonna do away with these ones like this. Okay, so before we even do anything, let's try and then refresh our page to see what we have over here. So we refresh, and now we have launch default model, but then it's just gonna be add files or add project files. So you say add files like this. So I'm just gonna do away with this one. Okay, so now when I refresh, we are going to see the same thing exactly as we have specified, but then when you click on it, it's not gonna do anything, and that's because we need to also copy the model. So when we come into our template, we have default model over here. That's the target. So that's the ID of the model. That's the ID of the model. I'm just gonna search for it like this, and then you see we have two occurrences in this particular file. So I'm just gonna go to the next one, and this is actually the model we are looking for. I'm gonna collapse it like this and then copy it from here. All right, so right after this, I can just close it, but then I need to come into our project detail view and then scroll to the very bottom here and then paste our model over here. So now we have our model, and I'm just gonna save changes, go back onto our page, and we're gonna refresh it like this. Now we need to click on add, and now we are seeing the model appearing over here. All right, so let's do a couple of customization to the model. For instance, we need to change the name of the model over here and then do some few things to it. Okay. All right, so now we are actually going to give it a title, and then the title is going to be upload, and it's just going to be project files like this. Okay, so now that we have this, when we refresh, it's actually going to give us the same thing, but we also need to give it a form. Before we can actually upload, we need a form. But then if you take a look at the model body here, we don't have anything. We only have one fine body. That is what it says over here. So we're going to have to create a form. So I'm just going to go into the forms.py inside our project, and then we're going to scroll to the very bottom over here. Now we need to create a form. So first, we need to import our attachment model. So I'm gonna come here and then do from .models imports, bring a comma, and then do attachment like this. Okay, so now that we have imported it, I'm gonna scroll to the very bottom here and then create a class. Okay, so I need to create a class, and the class is just gonna be class, and then the name of the class is gonna be the name of the form. So we're gonna say attachment form like this. All right, so this is just going to be forms.model form like this. So we select this one. All right, so right from here, we actually need to define a class called meta. Let's say meta like this, and this meta class is just going to take the model. So that is the model we want to query from, and the name of the model is our attachment model like that. And from there, we also need the fields. So the fields actually is going to be a list of fields we want the users to have access to. But now we only need one field, and that is going to be the file. So when we go into our attachment model, we need a file. So the rest of the fields, we actually going to be setting it when we are actually uploading our attachments. So we have the file over here. Perfect. So let's save changes. Then we're going to copy this and import it into our views. So let's go back into our project views, and where we are creating our project views, and then I'm going to scroll to the very top. So here we say from .forms import project form. I'm also bring a comma and then do attachment form. All right. So I'm just going to scroll down to where we have our project detail page. Okay, so where we have the project detail view, that is precisely where we are actually going to upload our project files. Perfect. So let's scroll down where we have the comment form. I'm just going to copy this comment form and then paste it and then paste it one more time. And this time around, instead of comment form, we're just going to make it attachment form. So you're going to have attachment form like this, and it's just going to be the form we have over here. All right, so let me paste it over here. So now it's part of our context. Now I can just copy this context variable, come into our project detail view like this, and where it says modal body, I'm just gonna take away this, just gonna do away with this one, and then access our form like this. So that is gonna be attachment form like this. Okay, so we bring our attachment form over here, then we're gonna click on save all and then come back to our page like this. We're gonna refresh it, and now it seems like we are not having any errors. Then I'm gonna click on add files, and now we are seeing browse. So now you can browse to select a file. Perfect. Perfect. So there are a couple of things I want us to do. So let's go back into our views, and we are using this post request to save or create comment. We are actually also going to rely or utilize the same post request to save our attachment or upload our attachment. Actually, we can actually create a different view or function that is going to upload our attachment form. But I'm just going to rely on this one to do the creation of a comment and also upload of a project file. So let's see how we can do that. All right, so there are a couple of things I want us to do. And the first one is just going to be where we are making a condition to see if the person is part of the team. So instead of doing request the user in, I'm just going to do not in. So that is going to be the opposite of what we did previously. And what we're going to do is to come here and then come and copy all of this, scroll up here, and then we're going to paste it over here. Okay, so we are saying that if the person is not a team member, we want to send a message or show a message that you are not a member of this project, so you cannot comment. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down, and then we're going to return this particular message like this, and I have pasted it like this. Okay, so when this thing happens, the rest of the form is just gonna return this, and the rest of the form is not gonna run again. Okay. All right, so what we want to do is to be able to override the post method so that we can use it to make comment and then also upload project path. All right, so we want to make a condition to see if in our request, in our post request, we have something like comment underscore submit. So we say if and say comment underscore submit in request dot post like this. So sorry, capital. So post like this. So in our post request, if there is a comment dash submit, then it actually indicates that we are actually submitting a comment, and that is going to render this particular one. It's actually going to run this particular part. So I'm just going to copy this, come back into our project detail view, and then scroll to where we have our comment form. So all right, so let me search for comment underscore form like this. Okay, so here we have comment underscore form. Okay, so where we have the button, we need to add a name. So we say name, and this time around the name is just gonna be what we have passed from the backend. So we have comment underscore submit. So when this thing happens, when we try to submit the form, our backend is just gonna check to see if there is a comment underscore submit in the request. If it is a request, if it is in the request, then it's a comment that we want to submit, and it's actually going to run this part. So let me save changes actually and come here too, and then save changes and check to see if we can actually make a comment. So I'm going to come back, refresh, and since we have made some few modifications to this one, let me try to see if I can make a comment. So I'm going to say hello there, how are you, like that, and then try to make a and it says you are not a member of this project and you cannot comment. So it looks like everything is working. Let me go back into our project, scroll, let me go back into our admin, go to project, and let me search for create admin dashboard. So we have create admin dashboard, and the team working on it is the Java team. So let me go back to teams and check to see if I'm part of the Java team. So clearly Gentech is not part of the Java team. So it looks to me everything is working. I'm gonna add Gentech and then click and come back here, refresh the page. Let me actually refresh the page like this and then try to make another comment. So now hopefully everything should go through. So hello there, how are you? All right, and then click on post your comment, and now everything is going through. So it means this part is actually working. Okay. All right. So at this point, when the request has a comment underscore submit in it, it's actually going to make a comment. That means you're making a comment. What if there is no comment underscore submit? We actually want to do something else. So we want to actually upload our files. So I'm just going to scroll down here and then. All right. So at this point, we also need to take this one out because it's no longer needed. Let me make the comment once more. Hi there, how are you? And then click on post your comment, and it's actually going through. So everything is working nicely. So I'm just gonna scroll down. So we have if, we made an if statement here. So I'm just gonna copy this one and then come down here. So this is where the if statement is. I'm gonna come here and then make another if statement here. So this time around, instead of checking to see whether there is a comment underscore submit in the post request, we're actually going to do attachment underscore submit. So it's attachment underscore submit in the post request. So let me do a pass over here so that we don't have any errors. Save changes. I'm going to go back into our project detail page and then scroll to where we have the upload attachment form. So we search for attachment underscore form. So let me go through this like this. So have attachment underscore form. Perfect. Okay, so here we need to wrap everything in a form because we want to do a post request. So I'm just gonna do form, and now we have our form over here. So I'm just gonna cut the end of the form here and then wrap it over here like this. Okay, so now that we have our form, the method, we're gonna give it a method. The method is just gonna be a post method. So we say post. All right, so we also want to have the ability to upload multiple files. So we're gonna do and type like this, and that is just gonna be set to. So we want to set this one to multi-part or like form dash data like this. Okay, so and then since it's a post request, we also want to add our CSRF token. So I'm gonna do CSRF token like this. Now we have actually included it. So we have our button over here which says save changes. All right, so we're just gonna give it a type. So the type is actually gonna be submit like this. And then the next thing we also want to do is just going to be the name. So the name is just going to be equal to what we have passed in our backend over here. So here we did attachment underscore submit. So I'm going to copy it and then paste it for the name. That is what we are going to check to see if it is in our request. So if this attachment underscore submit is in our request, that means we are actually trying to upload our files. And then the value, we also want to say value. This value is just gonna be upload files like this, and instead of doing button, I'm just gonna do input like that. Okay, all right, so let's save changes and then try to refresh it and see. So I'm just gonna refresh it like this, and when you click on it, we are still seeing this. Okay, so let's write the logic for saving or uploading the form. So now we are just passing, but we need to write the logic. All right, so first we're just gonna get our attachment form. So we say attachment underscore form. That's how we are calling it. and that is going to be equal to our attachment form, and we say request dot post. So we say request dot post like this, and we say request dot files like that. Okay, so now that we have this, the next thing we're going to have to do is make a condition, check to see if the form is valid. So we say if, and now we want to check to see if the form is valid. So if attachment underscore form dot is valid like this, so we have to run it. So we have to run it like that. And if it is valid, we're going to say attachment meant, and then the attachment is just going to be equal to attachment form dot save. So this time around, we don't want to save it right away, so we say commit is equal to, I'm gonna say false like that. So we are not saving it at the moment. Okay, the reason why we are pausing on saving the form is to be able to attach some few details to it, because when you come into the model, we have the file, we have the project, the user, and all that. So we need to set all of them before we save it. Okay, so at this point, we're gonna say attachment dot, and we say project. It is just gonna be equal to. So what is that gonna be equal to? It's just gonna be equal to project. So we say project like that. We have actually defined project already. Project. And okay. So the next thing we have to do is to actually assign a user to it. So we say attachment dot user. So when we come into the attachment model, we have a user, and the user is just gonna be equal to the logged in user. So we say request dot user like that. And now that we have done this, the next thing we want to do is to save it. So we say attachment dot save, and that is how we are saving it. So after we have saved it, we need to pass a message or send a message, and then the message is just gonna be message dot success. So let me copy this one and then paste it over here. And then we're gonna say your file has been, instead of saying added, we say uploaded successfully. That is just gonna be it. And now we need to redirect. So where we are redirecting to is just gonna be the same page as when we make a comment where we redirect to. So I'm just gonna redirect to the project detail page like that, and from there we're gonna do an else statement here. So the else is just gonna be when the form is not valid. So we say else, and we need to send a message. So what I'm gonna do is to say messages dot error like this, and we need to pass in the request. So we say request like this, and then we need to pass the message we want to display to the person. So we say error loading the file, please try again later like this. And all right, so that is all that we need to do. Let's try to save changes to all the files that we have modified. We have actually saved changes to all. We're gonna go back here, and then now we're gonna refresh our page. All right, so now we have only 2 files here. I'm just gonna click on this, go to browse, and then look for another attachment. So I'm just gonna select this one and then click on upload file. So let's click on that, and now we have 3 attachments. So we can, and now it also says your file has been uploaded successfully. All right guys, welcome back. So now we are on our project detail page, and we want to have the ability to click on this href or button here that says view Kanban board. So when you click on that, it's going to open this page, the Kanban board page, and this Kanban board is actually coming from our template. So here you can see the list of tasks we have, the ones that are in the backlog, the to-do progress, and then those tasks that are done. All right, so in order to do this, you're gonna have to first of all, okay, so here I really want to clear all these things. I really want to close this because I don't need it. Admin and then project detail page. Okay, so we're going to be going over to the project detail and detail.html. So we're going to be using that one also. All right, so we have the views here, and the Kanban board is also going to be inheriting from the detail view. So I'm just going to copy everything right from here to this part. Perfect. All right, so from here, I'm just going to come down and then paste the Kanban board, this one over here. So I need to rename this one to Kanban board view. So let me do that view like this. All right, and I'm just gonna copy it and then paste it over here to where we have the project detail view. All right, so the model is still gonna be the project model, and then the template is gonna be project, and then we're gonna go into Kanban board.html. So we say Kanban board.html. This template doesn't exist. We are going to create it in a sec, but before we go ahead and then create it, let's do a couple of editing over here. All right, so we have the notification, the project. You're gonna get the project object like this. You're also gonna need the latest notification and all that, but this paginator is something that we are not going to need. Even the comment here, we are just gonna delete everything right from here. Okay. All right, so we're gonna need the notification and then the count. The header text, we actually gonna need it, and it's gonna be a Kanban board. So let's set that one over here. So we say Kanban board like this. All right, so the title is just gonna be the project name, and then we bring the Kanban board. So what I'm gonna be doing is to use an F string over here. So I'm just gonna do F and then double quotes like this. And once I have done this, I can just do this and then do project.name like this. And once I have done this, I can just bring a single quote over here and then do Kanban board like that. Perfect. Okay, so we don't need a company name, my company, we don't need it, the company description, page object, comment, and all these things, we don't need it. Okay, so now that we are done with this one, the next thing we're gonna do is to just copy the Kanban board like this and then import it. So let me bring up the sidebar and then go to where we have the URLs. So I'm just gonna bring a comma here and then paste our Kanban board like this. Since our Kanban board is also a project detail view, I'm just gonna copy the URL for the project detail view and then paste it over here. Perfect. All right, so at this point where we have the PK, I'm just gonna bring a / and then I'm just gonna do Kanban dashboard like this. And then we're gonna bring our Kanban board detail view and then paste it over here. So now that we have this, we're also gonna copy this and then paste it as a name for the URL. So this is what I'm just gonna do over here. Perfect. Now that we have had our URL set up, the next thing we're gonna have to do is to link the Kanban board URL to our button. So if we take a look at where we have the project detail, we want to link it to the href over here. So I'm just gonna go into the project detail view over here and then search for view Kanban board like this. All right, so this is where we are going to pick the URLs. So I'm just gonna do URL like this, and then the URL is just gonna be project : and we have Kanban board, Kanban dashboard like this. And at this point, we need to provide the PK of the project or the ID of the project. So I'm just gonna do project.id like this. ID like this. So we are just getting project, and that's because when you come into our SwiftUp project, go to URLs, we are actually referring to, or the namespace for the project URL is just gonna be project. That's why we are doing project over here. Kanban dashboard. When we come into the projects and then project URLs, we are actually calling this as Kanban dashboard, and it's actually gonna require a PK. That is the primary key of the project, and that is what we have passed over here. So at this point, we're gonna save changes. And one thing we need to do is when we come into our views, we have projects, and then Kanban board.html. That is the template we are going to use, and it doesn't exist over here. So the next thing we have to do is to create this Kanban board.html. I'm gonna click on this and then do Kanban board.html like this. Perfect. So we have Kanban board.html over here. So now let's save changes. I have already saved changes. Let's refresh our page to see. All right, perfect. So this is what we have over here. But then when I click on Kanban board, it now takes us to this page. So we can do Kanban board like this, save changes, and this is what is just going to show on our Kanban board page. Perfect. We have it over here. All right, so I'm just gonna go into the project detail view, scroll to the very top, and I'm just gonna copy these things over here. Copy it, come to the Kanban board over here, and then I'm just gonna paste it. So save changes, and it's actually gonna inherit our base.html. So we have the style over here. Perfect. Now what we have to do is to come to this place and then do block content. So say content like this, and I'm just gonna cut the end of this part because it's not important, and then I'm just gonna come to the middle section here. Now I'm just gonna scroll down to our template, and then inside our templates we have pages, and then we have Kanban board. All right, so I'm just gonna toggle into a full screen like this, and I'm gonna search for main content. So I'm gonna do main. Okay, so this is what we are seeing, but let me do a section. So it's a section like this, and we have 4 occurrences. So section, and this is what we want because this is where the main page actually goes into. You see we have backlog and all those stuffs over here. So when we open our Kanban board, we have backlog. So we are in need of everything starting from this section. So I'm just gonna go here and then collapse this one right here, and I'm gonna copy everything within the section. The section is not gonna be included. Let me close this one and copy everything right here. Okay, so now I don't need a Kanban board.html anymore. I'm gonna come into the block content and paste everything over here. All right, so guys, now let's save changes and then refresh our application to see what we have. And this is what we have. So the styling and everything looks very off, and in our next video you're gonna fix everything. Perfect. All right, guys, so in our previous video we ran into an issue where our Kanban board styling looks like this versus what we have in the project itself, which actually aligns very well. But we have an issue over here, and that's because when we go into our template, so let me bring up the Kanban board.html from the template. Inside here, let's search for content wrapper. So you say content wrapper like this, and then the content wrapper actually has content-wrapper, then it has another class of Kanban. All right, so this is what we are missing. Now we go into the base.html. So let me scroll to the project template, and let's go into the base.html and search for the same thing. So here we are having content-wrapper. So the Kanban board actually needs another class called Kanban that is actually going to fix the styling. But our base.html doesn't have this class. So to fix that, what we're going to be doing is to go to add another context variable. And this variable, we're going to call it is_Kanban. So let me copy this one and then paste it over here. So I'm just going to call it is_Kanban like this to indicate that we are on the Kanban board page. And I'm just going to set that one to true. So anytime we visit this page, it's just gonna is_Kanban is just gonna be true. All right, so right after this, we're gonna go into the Kanban board and then copy that particular class, then go into our base.html, and where we have the content wrapper over here, we need another class. But before we add a class, we need to make a condition. So the condition is gonna be if, and you're gonna say is Kanban. So if is_Kanban. Let me copy that variable from here. So if is_Kanban base.html, and then we paste the Kanban here. So if that is true, then the class we want is just gonna be is Kanban over here. and then I'm just gonna paste that class over here. So what this essentially does is when we visit the page, this context variable is just going to be set to true. But for other pages where we have not defined the context variable is underscore Kanban, then it's actually going to be set to false. So on this Kanban board page, it's going to be set to true. And once we have it as true, then it's just going to set this class. That is actually going to fix all our errors. So I'm just going to save changes, and then I'm going to refresh the page, and hopefully everything should be fixed. And now we have all our styling and everything fixed over here. All right, guys, so if you found this tutorial very helpful, don't forget to like, comment, share, and I'm just gonna see you in the next video. All right, guys, welcome back. So this is our Kanban board, and we have backlog task to do in progress and then done. So these are basically the status we have in our task model, with the exception of backlog. So let me go back into the task model. So I'm gonna scroll to where we have the task app and then open the model, and you're gonna realize that we have status choices, and that is the to do, in progress, and then completed. So that means we need to add one more status, and that is just going to be the backlog. This basically is going to hold all our backlog activities or tasks that we have not actually started working on them. So I'm just going to replace this part with backlog. So I'm going to do backlog like this, and then I'm just going to copy it and then paste it over here. So now we have 4 statuses instead of 3. And once we have done this, I'm also just going to scroll to the task model, and where we have the default to do, I'm just going to replace that one with backlog. So by default, every task we create is just going to have a default value for the status to be backlog. All right, so let me save changes, and then all right, so now that we have saved changes, let me bring up my terminal and then make migration. So we're going to do Python money.py make migrations, and we wait for migrations to be made. And now it says that we have actually altered the status field, and then the next thing to do is to migrate. So we say Python money.py migrate. So we want to write the changes permanently to the database, and now it is written to the database. Now I'm just gonna go into my Django administration, and let's add some few tasks. So we're gonna scroll to where we have tasks, and then we have already having 2 tasks. I'm gonna click on add task, and we're gonna select the owner of the task. I'm just gonna do it Gentech, and then the name of the task, probably maybe create a logo or Swift Hub, like this, Swift Hub. Okay, so the project is just gonna be on the create admin dashboard, and from there the description, I'm just gonna copy the name of the task and then paste it several times. And then the status, now you see, is now defaulting to backlog, so I'm just gonna leave it on backlog like this. And the priority and everything, I'm just gonna leave it like that. And then the start date is just gonna be today, end date is also gonna be today. So let me save changes. I'm just gonna go again and then create another task. So it's just gonna be for Gentech, and then the name is maybe create server instance like this. And then it's also just gonna be on the same project, and I'm just gonna copy this and then paste it several times. And this time around, it's just gonna be on to do, and then save changes. So we could actually go ahead and then create a multiple multiple tasks just to cover this status, so that we can actually display something over here. All right, so now that we have some tasks for this particular project, let's go back and then try to list this task on the Kanban board. So we actually gonna replace every task we have over here with the task that is actually coming from the database, the real task that is coming from the database. Perfect. So what I'm gonna be doing is to come here and then make a comment. So the comment, okay, let me also toggle into the full screen, and then the comment, I'm just gonna say separate task by maybe status. That is what we wanna do. All right, so the thing we're gonna do is to get the task or the tasks of this particular project and separate them by status. So the first thing is just going to be context like this, backlog underscore task like this. So backlog underscore task. So these are actually going to be the tasks for this particular project that we have actually not started working on them. And the way we are going to get this one is to do project dot, and now you're going to do task like this dot, then we're going to filter all the tasks by status, and then the status, and then the status is actually going to be backlog log like this. So it's actually going to go into this project which we have actually defined over here and get all the tasks, and then it's going to filter by the status, where the status is backlog. It's going to bring all these tasks and then store it in this particular variable over here. So we have 4 different statuses, and I'm just going to paste this one 4 times. So the next one is actually going to be, so let me check our model, task model, and we have to do. So we come here and then we do to do underscore task. So I'm just going to replace this part and then do to do underscore task, and we're going to filter by to do like this. The next is actually going to be check here, and it's actually going to be in progress. So we say in progress underscore task. So let's do that. In underscore progress underscore task, and that is just going to be filtered where the status is in progress. And then the last one is just going to be completed underscore task. I'm just going to do it done or completed underscore task like this, and the status, or we're going to be filtering by completed. So I'm just going to go here and then do this. Okay, so let's do this one, completed underscore task. So it's a completed underscore task like this. Okay, perfect. Now that we have had this is actually going to filter the task of this particular project based on the status. Now we could go into our Kanban board, but before that, let me save changes, go back into our Kanban board. So right here is a Kanban board, and if you take a look at backlog, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 tasks. Okay, so let's search for backlog, and backlog is over here. We have card body, and right here we have the first task. So when I click, you're gonna realize that it ends over here. So let me collapse this one like this, bring a space over here. So this is the first task. We only need one to loop over. I'm just gonna collapse this, and then that. All right, so backlog actually ends over here. Perfect. So now we are going to maintain this. Now I can delete this, and that. So let me delete everything right from here. Let me save changes to see if we are doing the right thing. Refresh, and this is what we have. Perfect. I'm just also going to delete this subtask over here. We are going to be dealing with that very soon, but for now, I'm just going to do away with them very quick. So I'm just going to open this one up and then scroll to where we have card body. That actually houses all the subtasks. And once we have this is actually going to be our backlog task. So let's do a for loop. So I'm going to do for, and now we can say task. So now we can do task like this in. Then we're going to come back into our page, our Kanban board view over here, and then pick the backlog tasks. So I'm just going to go here and then paste it over here. I'm also going to cut the end of the for loop like this and then wrap it around this very one. Okay. So this is actually going to loop through all the tasks for this particular project that has the status of backlog. So now here is just going to be the title of the task or the name of the task. And I'm just going to wrap this one over here and then do task dot, and it's just going to be name. So when you come into the task model, we have name over here. Perfect. From there, we also want to get the number on the list. So that is going to be for loop dot counter. So when we come here, I'm just going to wrap this one like this. And then I'm just going to do for loop dot counter like this. like that. Okay, so let's save changes and then refresh the page. So I'm just gonna refresh, and now we have create backlog. Sorry, and now we have create logo for SwiftUp. I'm just gonna go back here and then add another task. So I'm gonna do create a user manual like that, and it's just gonna be on the same project, that is create admin dashboard. And now I can just copy this and paste it a couple of times over here, and I'm also gonna leave it on backlog, and everything is just gonna be the same, and then save changes. So now we have two tasks that are actually on this particular project that has the status of backlog. So now when we refresh, we are supposed to see two. I'm just gonna refresh, and now we are seeing create a manual. Perfect. Now we need to do the same thing for to do. So let's go back into our code and where we have to do. So to do is over here, and now we can wrap this one like this, which is 4, and it's just gonna be task like that. And we go back into our view and we call it to do task, copy it and then paste it over here. Now that we have this, we can cut the end of the for loop over here, and sorry, you can cut the end of the for loop over here, and I'm just gonna click on this to see where it ends, and then I'm just gonna wrap it over here. Okay, so here we can also have, say, task dot name like that, and then close it. Here we also gonna have the for loop dot counter like that. Save changes, and then we're gonna refresh to see. And now we have create server instance that is actually coming from the database right here. The next thing is just gonna be on the in progress. So the tasks that are already in progress. So we come back to our HTML and search for in progress. So in progress starts over here. So let me bring it down a bit. In progress, and then the task actually starts over here. All right. So you're gonna do for, and it's just gonna be task like this. Come back and then get the variable for in progress, and then we're gonna paste it over here. Cut the end of the for loop, and let me click on this div to get the end and the closing part, and I'm just gonna wrap it over here. First, we don't need the card body or the description, something that we are going to be dealing with very soon. So I'm just gonna clear this part over here, and now we can do task dot name over here, and then the next thing is just gonna be for loop dot counter to get the number on it. So you'd say for loop dot counter like this, and then the final one is just gonna be the done or completed task. So we can just do completed over here. So I'm gonna do completed like that, and we have the card body over here. Okay, so card body over here, and this is the part we need to loop over. So we say for, and it's just gonna be task like this, and we go back into our view and we have completed task. I'm gonna come back to this place, and then I'm gonna paste it over here, and then I'm just gonna cut the end of the for loop. Okay, so let me click here to see where it's supposed to be wrapped, and we're gonna wrap it over here. Now we need to get the name of the task, so that is just gonna be task dot name, and then the next one is just gonna be for loop dot counter. So we're gonna do for loop dot counter like this, and now we have actually looped through all the tasks we have for this particular project. So let me refresh, and now this is what we are seeing. We don't have any of the tasks for, we don't have any of the tasks that is being completed, but I'm just gonna go into the database, and then this particular task that says create server instance, I'm just gonna mark it as completed. Create server instance, and now it's on to do. I'm just gonna go and then mark it as completed. Come back here, refresh, and now we are seeing it over here. All right, create a manual. I'm just gonna mark it as in progress. Create a manual and mark it as in progress. And now when I refresh, this particular one should be moved to this part. And now it is there. All right, guys. So now we are seeing all our tasks on the Kanban board. If I should come back into the admin and let's say create a manual, come back here and then backdate this particular project. So let's say we started this project some time ago. Instead of 24th, we started it, let's say yesterday, and we were able to finish it yesterday. Now we save changes. This particular task is actually in the past, but we don't want to show it over here. So when I refresh, we are still seeing it create a manual. Clearly, this project is in the past on the 23rd, and today is 24th. We don't want to show it over here. And we have already built a model methods to do that. So when you come here, let me scroll and we have upcoming. This is actually going to filter where the due date is actually not in the past. So it's going to pick everything from now or today or something that is higher than that. And that is going to show the projects on. So we're going to have to bring this model method or this query set dot upcoming. That is going to filter to exclude all project that is actually less than the due date. So let's go back into our view and wherever we have this. So I'm just going to hold Alt, click, 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 and do dots. And I'm going to do upcoming like this, like this. Perfect. Now let's save changes and hopefully when we refresh, we are not supposed to see this manual, create manual. So I'm just going to refresh like this and it's gone. It's actually being filtered out. All right, guys, I'm just going to see you in the next video. All right, guys, so welcome back. Now we are on our Kanban board page and here we have various tasks on these columns. What we want to do in this video is very simple. We want to have the ability to drag and drop a task from one column to another. So when you come into our backend for each of the tasks, we have status, and the status ranges from backlog to do, in progress, and then completed. And these are the same statuses we are seeing over here. So this column is backlog all the way to completed. So when we drag a task from one of the column to another, what we essentially want to do is to register this inside our database so that when we even refresh this page, it's just going to remain where it was actually dropped. Okay, so first of all, before we are even going to do that, we're going to go into our code editor and then we're going to scroll to where we have our Kanban board. So I'm just going to click on this and also going to toggle into a full screen. So when you come here, you are seeing lightbox.css. So this is something that I want to copy because this is a style that is only exclusive for the Kanban board page. So I'm just going to go into where we have our template inside the component. And when we go into start.css.html, you're going to realize that we don't have it over here because all the other pages are not using this CSS. It's only used by the Kanban board page. So in order to make this page access it, we're going to go into our base.html. I'm going to scroll to where we have the base.html. So we click on template and we go to base.html. I'm also going to collapse the sidebar like this. Scroll to where we have CSS right here. And what we're going to do is to add a block. So this block is going to be called block CSS. So we're going to do block and I'm going to call it page underscore CSS. So this is actually going to hold the page specific CSS. I don't need the end or the closing block over here. And I'm also going to do this. Okay, so right from here, I'm just going to copy this, come to the Kanban board page. So let's look for the Kanban board inside the project. Kanban board.html, and we're going to go to the very top here. All right, so here I can now make a comment and do page specific CSS. So page specific CSS like this. Okay. Then I'm just gonna paste this one over here. So now we should also go back into our Kanban board.html. What is it? And then we're gonna copy this particular class. So I'm just gonna copy it over here and then come back to the Kanban board.html and I'm just gonna paste it over here. Perfect. So now at this point we need to load the static. So I'm just gonna do load and static. So we're gonna copy this static over here, template tag, and then we're gonna come to where we have the href, and I'm just gonna clear everything like this, and I'm just gonna do static like this. And now that we have the static, I'm just gonna come here and then cut everything over here and then paste it right at this part. So now we have successfully loaded this static or this CSS only on this page. I'm also gonna save this one over here like this. Now when we refresh our page, nothing much is gonna happen. Perfect. So now at this point, what we want to do is to change the mouse from this pointer to a grab icon when we hover over this one. All right. So to do that, we first of all have to add some few classes to our HTML. First of all, I'm going to scroll to where we have the task. So first of all, I click on this one and that is going to give us the column for this particular backlog task. So here I'm just going to bring a space here and then I'm just going to bring board dash column, and that is going to help us be able to target all the columns on the page. For each of the tasks, we want to put task dash card over here. All right, so I'm just going to copy this, scroll to wherever we have task, and I'm just going to paste this one over here. And where we have the to do column, we also put board dash column like this. Okay, so we scroll to in progress, and where we have in progress, we also put board dash column like this, column like this, and then we're gonna go to the task and we put task dash card over here. Let me scroll up whether we also did that for to do. Yes, we did that for to do. You scroll down to where we have completed, and I think completed board actually start from here, and now we're gonna give it a class of board dash column like this, and where we have the individual task, I'm just gonna paste task dash card like this. So from here, I'm just gonna scroll down up here to where we have the head.css. Now we need to write CSS to turn the cursor to a grab when we hover over any of these tasks. Perfect. All right, so I'm just gonna do style like this, and this style we are just gonna be targeting the task dash card. So I'm gonna do dot, then paste the class over here. Now that we have the class, I'm just gonna do cursor like this, and the cursor we want to change it to grab like that. And right from here, I'm just gonna save changes, go back to our page, and we're gonna refresh. Perfect. So now you see it has actually turned into the grab. For each of these ones, it has turned into a grab. Perfect. All right, so at this point, it's time to write our JavaScript to allow us to move tags from one column to another column. And like I was saying, we are going to use JavaScript to do this. And for us to be able to do that, we have to go onto the base.html and then add page specific JavaScript. So what I'm going to do is at the bottom here, I'm just going to bring another block, and that is going to be block, and we're going to call it JavaScript. Sorry, we're going to call it script like this. Perfect. And we don't need the ending part over here. And I'm just going to bring this one down like this. And from here, I'm going to copy this block content, come to our Kanban board, and at the very bottom of the page, I'm just going to paste it over here. Okay. So now that we have this, we can begin to write our JavaScript. The first thing we want to do inside the block, the script, we're going to do script like this. Okay, so at this point, what we want to do is to do document dot add, and we say event listener like this. Essentially, what we are doing is to load this script only when the page has loaded successfully. And to do that, we're gonna do DOM content loaded like this. Okay, perfect. Sorry about this typo. I'm just gonna clear one of them like this. Okay, so at this point, I'm just gonna bring a comma over here, and then we bring our function like this. All right, so at this point, what we wanna do is to be able to select all the task cars. So we're gonna do const, and we're gonna call it task cars like this, and that is just gonna be equal to document dot, and we're gonna do query selector all like this, and we are going to select all elements with this particular class, and that is going to be dot task dash card. So that is going to be, let me go up a bit and show you. We have task dash card. It's just goes through the list or for all the columns. So here we are just going to select all of them like this. And now that we have selected this particular one, the next thing we want to do is to loop over. So you're going to say, I'm just going to copy this particular one over here and then paste it over here like that. And we're going to do dot for each like this. So for each of these, we're going to call it card. And this particular card is just going to be, so we write our function like this. Now we have access to the individual cards over here. So what we're going to do is to say card dot, and we say draggable. So each is going to have a draggable property. So we're going to say draggable, and that is going to be true. So we are now setting it to true like this. And after we have done this, so let's save changes, and I'm going to save changes to all the files. I'm going to go back to our page, and then we're going to refresh like this. All right, so now let's test and see. So let me try to drag. I'm dragging and it's not working, and that's because when you come here, function is spelled wrong. So I'm just going to correct it and then come back, refresh the page. And now when we do this, we are able to drag it, but then it's not allowing us to drop it. Perfect. Let's go back into our text editor like that. Okay. All right, but before we even go ahead and then work on the dropping, we want to have the ability to store the task ID whenever we start the dragging. So I'm just going to do card dot, and we're going to do add event listener like this. And the event listener we want to add is just going to be drag start. So when we start dragging, drag start like this. Okay, perfect. And now we're going to bring our comma and we're going to say E like this. So right from here, what we want to do is to be able to store the tag. So we're going to do E dot, and we say data transfer like this, and data transfer dot set data like this. And the data that we want to set is just going to be coming from, so I'm going to scroll to the very top here. All right, so for each of the tasks, we want to add a data property, and that is just going to be task data task ID. So data dash task dash ID like this, and that is just going to be equal to task dot data. So we're going to do task, we're going to do task dot data like this. So I'm just going to copy this because this is just on the backlog. So we're going to go to, this is just on the backlog. We're going to scroll to all the columns here on the to do. We're going to paste this one over here. Scroll down to where we have in progress. And inside in progress, we also have this one right here. We're going to paste it, scroll down to the last one. That is just going to be the completed. And we're going to paste this one over here. All right. So right now that we have done this, I'm going to scroll to where we have our JavaScript like this. And here we say event.dataTransfer.set data. So the data we want to set data, and I'm just gonna do text dash plain like this, and from there I'm just gonna bring a comma and then do card dot, and you say data set dot, and it's just gonna be stored as task ID like this, ID like this. Okay, I'm just gonna bring this, and now we want to have the ability to see the task ID of each of the tasks that we drag the moment we start dragging. So I'm just gonna do console.log, and what we want to log is card.dataset set like this. So let's save changes. Perfect. And I'm also going to close this, bring up my browser like this, and I'm just going to right click and then go to inspect. And here, I'm just going to go to the console tab over here. This error we are seeing is actually coming from the dashboard 2.js. That is something that came with the template. I'm just going to disable it temporarily. So I'm just going to go into our template here, and we go into components, and where we have JavaScript, this is the template. This is not something that we are even using, so I'm just gonna comment it out like this. Save changes. I'm just gonna save changes to all, which is something I have already done. I'm just gonna bring up my browser like this, refresh it one more time, and now you're seeing everything to be clean. Okay, so I'm just gonna delete everything right here, bring this one down a bit, and then the moment I start dragging, it's supposed to console log the task ID. So let me start like this, and they say task ID. When you go into it, you're going to see that we have no task ID. Let's inspect our code to see what is happening. So I'm gonna just go up to where we have the task data for backlog, and we are seeing tax.data, but then we don't have tax.data, we have tax.id. So that is a mistake on my part. Let me copy this and then scroll to wherever we have this. I'm gonna replace this one right here, scroll down again to this particular data attributes and paste this, and we have one more, and that is gonna be data.task ID over here. This was the mistake that we made. I'm just gonna click on save all, and one more time I'm just gonna refresh the page. Perfect. So now I'm just gonna clear everything over here and start dragging, and now you are seeing the task ID. So when I drag, you are seeing the task ID. So this is actually gonna be very useful when we start implementing the Ajax to actually, the moment we start dragging to maybe to do, it's just gonna update our database from backlog to do, and we're gonna need a task ID here to be able to modify that particular task status. Perfect. All right, so now you see we can drag, but we can't drop. And before we can be able to drop, we need to override the default behavior. So I'm gonna scroll down to this particular part and then go to this part. So we first of all need to get hold of the columns. So we're gonna do much like what we did with the cars. We also want to grab all the columns. So I'm gonna do const, and it's just gonna be columns. That's how I'm just gonna call it, columns. And what we are gonna be doing is to do document dot, and we're gonna do query selector all, and what we are going to be grabbing is all elements with the class dot board dash column. So it's a board dash column like this, so this is where we are getting it from. We have board dash column for each of the boards that we are seeing over here. When you come here, this is one board, second, and then third. They are all having the same classes. So now that we have grabbed this particular, all the columns, the next thing we want to do is to loop through them. So we're going to say columns. So now you're going to have to loop through all of them. So we're going to say columns like this dot, and we do for each. So each of the columns, what do you want to do? What we want to do is to get access to each of the column like this. And now that we have access to it, we're just gonna do a function. We're just gonna do this, and then what we're gonna do at this point is to be able to prevent the default behavior. So I'm gonna do column dot, and we're gonna do add add event listener, not like this. And then the event listener is just going to be dragged over for like this. And what we want to pass is just going to be E like this. Okay, so at this point, you want to prevent the default behavior, and that is just going to be E dot prevent default like this. And I have to bring this and then also this over here. So let me save changes, go back to our page, and we're going to refresh it. So now we can drag, and now we are not seeing that red icon on the mouse or on the cursor. Okay, so now we are preventing the default behavior. Perfect. Okay, so now we also want to add the ability to drop this task. So we're gonna do column dot, and the next thing we want to do is to add event listener like this, and then the event listener we want to add is just gonna be the drop. So we do drop like this, and from here we're gonna do E. All right, perfect. Okay, so what we want to do at this point is to be able to get the task ID that we stored. So we're gonna do const, and we say task ID like this, and this task ID is gonna be the tags that the ID that we have stored over here. So what we're gonna do is to do E dot, and we're gonna do data transfer dot. Instead of set, we're gonna do get. So we're gonna do get, and now we are getting the data, and that is just gonna be text dash plain like this. Okay, perfect. That is just gonna give us the task ID. The next thing we also wanna do is just gonna be the card. We need to get each particular card, the card that we are dragging. So that is just gonna be const, and it's just gonna be task card like this. And now that we have this variable defined, we're gonna do document. So document dot, and we're gonna do query selector, not all. And from here, what we wanna select is just gonna be, first of all, let me bring this backtick like this. We want to select the data attribute of each task, the data attribute. So that is just going to be data task ID. So let me grab this one from one of these and then paste it over here. But then I have to bring a square bracket like this and then paste this one over here. So now that we have this, I'm going to bring an equal sign and then bring this double quotes like this, and then a dollar sign over here. And I'm just going to grab the ID like this. So that's going to be task ID. So we pass this task ID like this. All right, so we pass the task ID to give us a particular task card. So, all right, so now that we have the task card, what we're going to be doing is to move the task card or the card from one column to another. Let's say we picked it from here. We want to be able to drop it over here. Or let's say we picked it from here, we want to be able to drop it on any of these columns. And to do that, let me make a comment first. So I'm going to make a comment and do move the task card to the new column like this. Okay, so the way we are going to move it is going to do column. So this is just going to be the column over here, dot, and we say query selector. So I'm just gonna copy this one over here and then paste it over here. Okay, so now we can get a column. So we're gonna move the task card to the new column, and what we're gonna be doing is column dot query selector, and we're gonna grab all instances of all elements with this particular class. So the class is just gonna be task dash list like this. This class doesn't exist, and we need to make sure it exists. So I'm just gonna copy it over here, and let's scroll to all of our columns. So before we do the for loop where we have the card dash body, I'm just gonna bring this task dash list, because this container or this div is just gonna contain all the tasks like this. So let me show you on the front end. It's just gonna contain all the task like this. So all of these are going to be appended. So I'm going to scroll down again, and so here we have, before we do the for loop again, we bring this, that is going to be for the to do, and we scroll down to in progress, and we bring that one over here, and then the last one is just going to be completed, and we bring it over here. So I'm going to scroll down again, and now we have selected all these. We have now selected this like that. So we select this, and then what we're going to be doing is to do dot append child. So we do append, and we do child like this, and the child that we want to append is just going to be the task card like that. So I'm going to copy it and then paste it over here. So let me save changes. Let me save changes to all, and then come back to the page, and then we're going to refresh this particular page. Okay, so now when I drag it, I can drop it like that, no issues. So it's just going to append it. So now here we have two tasks here, but then when I drag it like this, append is just going to put it at the very bottom here. But if we want to put it at the very top, then we're going to have to use another property. Instead of append, we're going to do prepend like this. Save changes, and I'm just going to refresh the page, and I'm going to do this, and it goes here. But now when I do this, it just goes to the very top. Let me come here. So create server instance. When I drag it, even when I bring it to the bottom here, it's just going to go to the very top over here. Perfect. Perfect. But now look at what happens when we refresh the page. Everything goes back to how it was. So that means nothing was saved inside our database here. The status was not modified. So we have create logo for Swift Hub. Let me go here, create logo for Swift Hub. We drag it to this particular part, and it is now moved to this particular part. But when we come here, it was on backlog. Let's try to refresh. And when we do refresh, it is still on backlog. And when I come here and refresh, it's just going to be moved back to backlog. And we need to be able to save this new status to this particular database when we do the drag and drop without having to refresh our page. That is something that we are going to be doing. So I'm just going to go into bring our sidebar over here, and then scroll to task. So when we get to where we have our task, we're going to open our views like this. Okay, let me toggle into a full screen like this, and inside the task view, we want to create a function or define a function, and that is just going to be def, and the name is just going to be update. So we're going to call it update task status. I just want to be descriptive as much as possible, and it's just going to be an AJAX request like this. And here we're going to pass the request, and we're also going to pass task ID underscore ID like this. So this very task ID, sorry, let me close this one. Close this one as well. Come to the Kanban board, and the task ID that we are storing over here. When you come here, this is where we are passing it. We want to get it or pass it to our front end, and from the front end, we're going to get it at the back end and then query our task. Okay, so at this point, what we're going to be doing is to do a try, and inside here, we want to get access to the task. So we're going to do task, and the task is just going to be task.objects and we're gonna do get. We want to get the task by ID. So the ID is just gonna be the ID that we have passed over here. So let me copy that and then paste it over here. But initially we said it's just gonna be an AJAX request. So let's do a couple of import. The first import we're gonna do is just gonna be request post. So this is actually gonna be a post request. So we're gonna do from Django dot, and we say views dot the creators dot http. We do http like this. We're gonna import, and we're gonna import require post like this. It's over here. And another thing we also want to import is we want to import JSON. So import JSON like that. And now that we have imported JSON, we also need to import our model, and we say from dot models import, and we are going to import task, because that is the that is the model we want to query from. So now we do equal to, sorry, a mistake on my part. We bring the except like this. All right, so we'll come back to the except, but let me pass for now over here. Okay, perfect. So now that we have the require post, what I'm gonna do is to bring an at and then paste this one over here. So that means our function is actually going to allow only post request but not get or any other request. Okay, so now we have our task. So now that we have the task, we have query from the task. We say data, and then the data is just going to be, we say json dot load, and we are going to load, and we are going to load the request dot body like this. And after we have converted this one to JSON, the next thing we're gonna do is we say new status. So new underscore status. The new status we're gonna be assigning or saving into the database is just gonna be coming from the front end. So when the individual or the user drags it from here to this part, so this is actually going to give us a new status that is to do. And this to do is what we have gotten from the request over here. And now we're gonna do data dot get, and we're gonna get the status from the response. Status from the response like this. And when we start implementing the front end, the AJAX request, you're gonna realize that the data or the status that we are passing is all just gonna be in lower cases. So now we want to make it a title. So it's a title like this, that is a function. And now I want to print. So we print, and we are going to print a new underscore status like this. Okay. So from here, the next thing we want to do is to check if the new status is valid. So when we come into our task and then we go to the models, these are the valid status we have. We have backlog, to do, in progress, and then completed. And we want to check to see if the status coming from the front end or the request is actually in this status. It's a valid status. And the way we are going to do that, let me make a comment and say check if status is valid like that. Okay. So now that we are doing this, what we want to do is to say if new underscore status, what we have defined up there is in this particular list. So the list is just gonna be the list of our valid statuses. So the first one is just gonna be, we say backlog like this. So the next is just gonna be, I think it is to do. So to do like this. And we then have the next one that is gonna be in progress rest like this. And then the last one is going to be completed. Sorry about that. Completed like this. So guys, you can just copy them from here, copy these ones, and that is just going to be or form the list of the task, the status, the valid status. So I'm just gonna bring, because we are making an if condition. So at this point, if it is inside, what do we do? What we're gonna be doing is to say task dot, and we say status. So the status, task dot status, and then the status is just gonna be the new status we have over here. And now that we have assigned the task a new status, we're gonna do task dot save. So this is the only time we save it into the database. And if we successfully save it, we're gonna return, and what we're gonna be returning is just gonna be JSON response like this. So this is not imported. Let me import it at the very top over here. Okay, so let's come here and then do the import. So we're gonna say from Django dot, and we say HTTP import, and we're gonna say import JSON response. So this import is what we have used over here. So the JSON response you're going to provide is just gonna be a message, and the message is just gonna be a dictionary. So this dictionary is gonna be like this, and the first one is just gonna be a success. So we say success, and the success is just gonna be a boolean, so it's just gonna be true. So if we are able to save it, we're gonna say success is equal to true. Else, so now if it is not saved, so we say else like this. So that is when the saving actually failed. So we're gonna return. So let me copy this from this part and paste it over here. But then paste it over here. But then this time around, the success is just gonna be false like this. So false, false like this. And then the next we want to pass is just gonna be an error. So the error is an error, and our error is just gonna be a message. So what is just gonna be the error? So I'm gonna bring a message, and you can just give something very descriptive. So I'm gonna say invalid status. And now that we have the invalid status right here, I'm just gonna bring a comma and say status is just gonna be 400 like that. Perfect. Okay, so this is for when the status is inside, we are saving it and bringing the JSON response. But if the status is not in this list, we are just going to bring this message and say success is going to be false, error is going to be invalid status like this. But this is a try catch. So let's work on the catch over here. So the catch, we want to be specific and say task. So if task does not exist, so task does not exist, and what we want to pass is also going to be a JSON response. Let me copy this and then paste it at the pass over here. And the message you're going to pass is success is going to be false, and then the error message is going to be task not found. So we are not seeing the task. So we say task not found like this. And the status is just going to be 404 like that. 404 like this. All right, guys, so let's save changes, and now we need to add this one to our URLs. So let me go here, and then inside our task, we don't have any URLs here, but what we're going to be doing is to create a new file, and we're going to do urls.py like this. And inside the urls.py, we need to add or do a couple of import there. I'm just going to go into project and then copy the URLs from here. So I'm just gonna come here and then copy everything, and I'm gonna toggle into a full screen here and then paste the URLs over here. We need this, but from .views import. So let's go back into our views for the task and then do the import. So we're gonna import this particular task function over here. And now that we have done the imports, what we're going to be doing is we say app name. This app name is not going to be project, but then when you come to task, we can have apps over here. I'm just going to copy the name over here, and then we'll replace it with this particular one. And I'm just going to clear. Okay, come into your full screen like this, and I'm just going to clear some of these URLs. Let me clear all these ones, and even clear this particular one like that. All right, so our task need to have a name, and then the name of this, sorry, our URL pattern is just gonna be update dash task. So let's say task dash status dash ajax like this. We want to be more descriptive. Then after the ajax, I'm just gonna bring a slash like this, and then the task ID is already a UUID, and that is going to be representing the task ID we are passing from the function over here. So let me copy this one, come to the URLs, and then I'm just gonna paste it over here. We are mapping it like this. And right from there, we are just going to bring, we don't need a Kanban board. We only did a copying, that's all. And we're just gonna bring or import. We have already imported it, so I'm just gonna copy and then paste it over here. So since this is a function-based view, we are not going to bring dot as view, and then the name is just gonna be update task status. So let me copy this one, and that is just going to be the name of this particular function, or sorry, this particular URL over here. All right, so at this point, I'm just going to save changes, and now we need a way to test this. So I'm just going to come into the kanbanboard.html and scroll to where we have our function, where we have our JavaScript. Okay, so at this point where we have moved the task, I'm also going to make another comment. This is the point. This is the point when we do the dropping. We are now dropping the task over here. We are now dropping the task over here now on the Kanban board or on that particular column. And this is the perfect time to actually save the data into our database. Okay, so I'm just gonna call a function which does not exist. So we say make a comment, send ajax request to update task status. So that is what we want to do at this part. And the function I'm just gonna call is gonna be update task status like this. And this function which does not exist actually is gonna take task ID. So task ID, we have it over here. So let me copy that and then paste it over here. And we bring a comma, and we also gonna have our new status. So we say new status like this. And then I'm just gonna bring a comma over here. So the new status is actually not defined, so we need to define the new status over here. So let's say make a comment and say get new status. So let's think about how are we going to get a new status. To get a new status, we actually want to add an ID to each of the columns. So let's add ID to each of the columns. So I'm just gonna scroll to the first one. This is the column for backlog. When I bring it down like this, when I collapse it, you're going to see it over here. So sorry, I'm just gonna bring an ID, and then the ID, I'm just gonna do it backlog like this. So what we essentially doing is, let me go back into the template again, or even the views, and we are saying that the valid task status is going to be backlog, to do, in progress, and then completed. So the first one we want to give is going to be the backlog. So we exactly copy this one, and now we are pasting it over here, but then we are going to make it all lower cases, because our function over here is actually going to convert this one to title. So it's just going to bring the capitals, make each word in it a capital. So let's make it a lowercase. So the next one is just going to be to do, and I'm just going to copy the ID over here, go to the to do column, and where we have, okay, so here to do column, and we're going to bring ID, but this time around we're going to do to dash do like this. We bring dash wherever we have two words forming a status, we're going to bring a dash into it, and in our AJAX request we are going to replace it with a space. Perfect. So from there we are also going to go to the next status, and that is going to be in progress. So I'm going to copy this like that, come here, and we're going to have in progress. So we say ID, and that is just going to be equal to in progress. So we say in dash progress like that. Then the next or the last one is just going to be ID, and this ID is just going to be equal to completed like that. So let's verify from here, and we have completed. Perfect. So now we have assigned all these ones, every column, and ID. Okay, so let's scroll to our JavaScript and then get the new status that we have over here. So our new status, I'm just going to define a variable. I'm going to do const, and we say new underscore status. Sorry, new status like this. This new status is what has been passed over here. Okay, and that is going to be equal to column. So this particular column we have over here. So we say column like this dot, because each column is having an ID now. So this particular column has an ID, and we say column dot ID like that. And now that we have the ID, that is going to get us, let's see, this is going to get us completed, and this is going to get us in progress. So in the case of in progress, there is a dash here, but with status like backlog and completed, there's no dashes. So let's see how we can retrieve the correct status from this. So we do .id.replace, and we want to replace so here I'm just gonna do wherever we have dash in the status, we want to replace it with a space. So I'm gonna do this and bring a space over here, and then I'm just gonna bring a comma like this. So now this is going to be our status, and that has been passed over here. So I'm gonna go over that one more time. So where we have completed is just one word, so it's not gonna cause any issues. It's going to get the completed like it is. But wherever we have a space in it, like in the case of in progress where there is a dash, and to do where there is another dash, it's just going to replace this dash with a space, and that is going to give us to do like that. So I'm going to scroll down and then go ahead and then implement this functionality. All right, so now let's implement the update function. So let me make a comment and say update status Ajax like this. Okay, so at this point, we want to define, we say function, and then the name of the function is just going to be equal to this. So let me call it over here. Let me copy the function signature and then paste it over here like that. So now that we have this, what we're going to be doing is to, first of all, use fetch. So we say fetch like this, and let me bring the backtick like that. Okay, so right from here, we need to pass the URL of this particular function. So the URL, when we go into urls.py, is just going to be on this. So I'm going to copy everything right from here. Come back here, and then we're going to do task / and we're going to paste this particular URL / and we need to get the task ID. So I'm just going to bring the $ over here. Sorry, the $ over here, and then bring this, and we get a task ID. So we pass the task ID from here. So I'm just going to paste it over here like that. And I'm just going to bring this, and then the next is just going to be a comma. But one thing we have to note is we also need to register. This is where we are getting this one from. So when we come here, we say task, but then we have to register this particular task or the task URLs into our app. So I'm just going to scroll to Swift tab, and we go into URLs, and now we are in the project URLs. Let me collapse it like this, and I'm just going to copy one of these, come here, and then paste it over there. And this time around, we are going to be registering our task. So we say task like this. So this task is what we have it in the URLs over here. And from there, okay, so from there, we are going to include task URLs, and then the namespace is just going to be task like this. Okay, so now that we have done this, we can save changes over here and close this particular file. Okay, so now we have the correct, let me close this one as well. We have the correct URL over here. Perfect. So I'm just going to bring this and then open it up like that. So now we need to get a method. So the method is just going to be equal to, and it's just going to be a post method. It's just going to be a post method. So you can verify that one from here. We said post required. So we're going to do post over here like that. And now that we have the method pass, the next thing we're going to do is the headers. So we say headers, and the headers is just going to be a dictionary. And the first is just going to be a content type. So we say content dash type like this. So the allowed content type is just going to be application/JSON. So we say application/JSON like this. Okay, so now that we have this, we bring a comma, And then the next header is just gonna be our CSRF token. So the CX dash CSRF. So we have CSRF token like this, and we need to pass the CSRF token, and that is just gonna be we pass from our backend to the front end. So we need to collect it or get it like this. So that is gonna be CSRF underscore token like this, and this one has been passed. Let me remove one of these extra. Perfect. Now we can bring our comma over here. Okay, so now that we have this, so let me bring another comma over here as well. And now that we have this, the next thing we're going to pass to the fetch URL, or the fetch is just going to be the body of the body. So that is going to be body, and the body is going to be, we say JSON dot, and we do stringify like this, stringify like this, and now we have to pass a dictionary. So it's just gonna be the status is equal to new status. So the new status that has been passed over here. So let me copy that and then paste it over here. And now we can bring our comma. So the status that is being passed from the backend, this status, let me check. This status is what we are getting. So it's gonna be passed from the backend, like the front end like this, to the backend, and then the backend is gonna get this particular status. And like I was telling you, it's actually gonna be in lower cases where we remove the spaces over here. And now that we have removed the spaces, the backend gets it over here. And because our status is supposed to be capitalized, we have dot capitalize or dot title like this, and that is how we are doing it over here. Okay, so now we have it like that. Okay, so here now we need to process the response. So we say dot, then we have response like this, response like this. Okay, so now that we have the response, we're gonna do response dot JSON like this. So response.json like that. And from here we do dot then again. And the next thing is gonna be the data. So we say data now. Okay, so now we have the data flowing through. So what we have to do is say if the backend is just gonna respond with a data. So if the status is true, that means the data was actually saved. The backend has actually updated it. So we're gonna do if data dot success. If data dot success. So that means if it is successful, the backend is passing a response that success is going to be equal to true. Then what we are going to do is to do a console log. So what we are going to console log is going to be console.log over here, and we say task updated successful, task updated, or task status updated successfully. There's a lot you can do over here. And if that is not the case, that is just gonna be the else part of it. Else. So we're gonna do else. So that means if it is not, let's see like this, else. So that means if the response or data.success is just equal to false, we say console.log, and the log, sorry, you say console dot error like this, and the error message is just gonna be error updating task status, error updating task status like that. Perfect. So guys, that is all that we need to do. Let me save changes. You have now saved changes. Let me bring up this, and then I'm also gonna come here, and then let's refresh the page once more. Okay, so here we have an error. It says could not pass the remainder CSRF token. Okay, so let's go back into our code and then see what is causing that. So I'm just gonna scroll up over here and okay, so we have this extra. I don't know how this happened. So let's remove this and then this like that. I don't know how it happened, but let's save changes. Go back again and we're gonna refresh one more time and everything seems to be working. Remember, we said create logo for Swift app. So we go to create logo for Swift app. That is a create and it's on the backlog. So when you come here, it's actually on the backlog. And when you come to the status, when I even refresh, the status is still going to be on the backlog. But now we want to be able to change it when we drag from, let's say, backlog to into do. And we also want to console log it here. So I'm just going to start the dragging and paste it over here. And looks like we have an error over here and we have an error. So when I come here and then refresh, it's still on backlog because there was an error. Let's try to see what happened and then fix it. All right, so now we have this error. So let's first of all go through. When you come to this part, we are doing task, and that is because we have a wrong URL. So we have to bring a / over here, and this is going to fix our issue like that. Also, if you take a look at the name, we have update task, but we didn't, we say TAST. So let's change it to K task. And I'm also going to copy it, even though that is not what caused the error. The error was on the URL. And lastly, I want to bring this one over here. Okay, so this one should fix our errors. The error was on the URL. And now we're going to go here and then refresh our application once more. And I'm just going to clear this one. We are now going to move this one from here to do. But before that, let's see, we have backlog. The task is create a Swift app logo. And that is a backlog status. And we come here and it's still on this one. So I'm going to drag it from here to this place. And now we are seeing task created successfully. And I'm also going to come here and then refresh and it's now on to do. I'm also going to clear this one, move this one from in progress to this particular part. And we come back to that particular one. Let's see, create a manual. I'm going to come to create a manual. Where is it? Create a manual for create a manual, and create a manual was actually on. Okay, so let me click on that and it's now on backlog. You can come back here and move it to do. And from here, we can just come back and then refresh and it should be moved from backlog to do. Perfect. All right, so we can just move them over here and like that. And I'm just going to refresh and they are just going to stay there like that. All right, guys, so this is how to do it. If you find this tutorial very helpful, don't forget to like, comment, share, and I'm just going to see you in the next video. Bye-bye. All right, guys, so in the last video, we were able to implement a drag and drop functionality. So now you can drag it here and then refresh the page and it's going to stay there. You can also even drag this one here. And when you refresh, it's also going to stay here. But you're going to realize that each of these columns have different colors. So when you come to backlog, it has this color and we have this and that for all of it. So we want these colors to be able to match so that when you drag and drop this one over here instantly, the tip here or the top of this card, task card, is going to change to match this. And when you drag and drop even on any of these, like this particular one, is going to instantly have the success color over here. So let's go back and then implement it. All right, so to do that, we're going to scroll up to the very top of the Kanban board page and you're going to realize that these are the colors influencing it. So when you come to backlog, we are having card dash secondary, so that is giving us this particular color at this part. And when you scroll to where we have to do is actually here and it's now primary. And when you scroll down to where we have the in progress is the default color, and lastly we have the completed and that is having the success color. So let's try to implement that one. So to do that, we actually want to change the color when we drop it. So our system should be able to detect drop, and that is something that we have solved it perfectly. So when you scroll down here, we have drop over here where we move the card to the column where we want to move it. And we're gonna make a comment. We say update the class or the color. So you can say color based on the, that is gonna be based on the column. So you're gonna say column. All right, column like this. Okay, so what we're gonna be doing at this part is first of all to get hold of the task card. So we already have that variable over here. So I'm gonna copy it and then paste it over here. Dot, and what we're gonna do is, since we don't know where the card is being picked from, so it can be on the backlog coming to in progress or whichever place. So we're gonna do this card or the task card dot, and we're gonna say class list like this. And what we want to do at this point is to dot remove, and we are going to remove a couple of colors from it. So first of all, it's going to be card dash primary. That is going to be when we are on the backlog, and when we are on the in progress is card dash secondary. So secondary like this. And we also gonna remove another color. So let me scroll up to where we have the in progress. So in progress is gonna be card dash default. Okay, so let me copy this, and we want to remove that class as well. So card dash default, and then the final one is gonna be when it is completed. We have card dash success. So card dash success like this. Okay, so this is actually going to remove all these colors when the card is actually dropped, and it's not going to have any color at all. All right, perfect. So we are actually removing these colors, but then I think when it comes to in progress, it's not card dash default. Let me scroll up and then see the color that we are trying to remove. So in progress, the color should be card dash light. Okay, so that is the color we are removing from the card. So I'm gonna scroll down and then get where we have card dash defaults, and I'm just gonna paste this one over here. All right, so at this point we want to make an if condition. So we say if, and what we are checking is just gonna be the column ID. So we say column dot ID, and we want to check against backlog. So if the column ID is equal to backlog, so when you scroll up, you're going to see that the backlog column has an ID of backlog. So if it is equal to backlog, then we check to see the color that we have, and the color is just gonna be the card dash secondary. So we're gonna copy this and then scroll down to where we are making the condition, and we're gonna set that one over here. So I'm just gonna do this and say task card dot and class list dot. This time around, it's not gonna be removed, it's gonna be add, and we want to add this particular class. So that is gonna be equal to card dash secondary, and I'm just gonna bring this, and the else part is just gonna be else if, and we also want to check to see, the column ID. So if the column dot ID is equal to, that is going to be in progress, oh sorry, to do, that is going to be to do. So if the ID is equal to do, so we say to dash do, then we need to make a condition, we need to set it like this, and that is going to be task card dot classlist dot add. So I'm just going to paste this one here, but then we go to do and check to see which we have over there. So to do is gonna be card dash primary. So I'm just gonna copy the primary like this, and then scroll down to where we are making it, and then do primary. And the next one is just gonna be else if we check to see the column dot ID is equal to in progress. So in dash progress like this, So if it is equal to in progress, what we're gonna do is to copy this one and paste it over here. So we scroll to where we have in progress, in progress. So in progress is having card dash default. So we can copy card dash default and then we're gonna paste it over there. So I'm gonna come down here and then paste it over here, card dash default. Sorry. The last one is just gonna be else if, and we want to check to see if it is completed. So it's a column dot id and check to see if it is equal to completed. Completed. If it is equal to completed, then what we're gonna do is to come here and then do. So I'm gonna copy this one and then paste it over here. Just gonna paste it over here, but instead of card dash default, it's just gonna be card dash completed. So we say card dash success like that. Okay. So now that we have had this, let me save changes and then test our application to see. So I'm just gonna refresh the application like this, and I'm just gonna move this one from here to this, and it's still maintaining this color. So we move it and it's now changing the color to this. All right, so everything seems to be working. So I'm gonna drag it from backlog to completed, and straight away it changes the color. But then the moment I refresh, this is what I'm seeing. You're gonna realize that the color has been changed. And that's because when you come into our application over here where we are doing the completed, we are having the task card to have a primary color, and then the column is having success. So you're gonna have to copy this and paste it over here. So that is going to be like this. And then we scroll to where we have in progress. So in progress, we have card dash default. But then when you come here, we have card dash light. So we're going to have to copy this and then paste it at where we have the light. And we scroll down to where we have card dash primary for to do. And this one is actually matching perfectly. We come to secondary for the backlog. And when you scroll down, you're gonna see that we have card dash info. So you're gonna copy this one and then replace this one over here. So there's going to be some kind of visual changes when we refresh. So I'm just gonna refresh, and now you're seeing that all the completed are having the same color. So when I drag this one and drop it over here, it seems like the color is not coming, something that we are going to be fixing. But this one is working and this one is also working. In progress is not working. And what I want to do at this point is to maintain the color for to do for in progress. So I'm just going to go into the code and we go to where we have in progress. So let's check backlog. We have to do, scroll to where we have to do. So to do has this particular color that is primary. So I'm just going to copy the primary and then scroll to where we have in progress. And then I'm just going to replace the default with this particular one that is going to be in progress. So these two are all going to be having the same color apart from the columns. The card like this one having this color, when we drag and drop it here, we expect that it has the same color like when we drop it over here. So in that case, we're going to scroll to our code where we are making the if conditions, and we say to do is going to be primary, and when it is in progress, we also want to maintain primary over here. And this is actually going to fix everything we have going on in our code. So I'm just going to come here and then refresh and collapse this one. Now, when I drag and drop this one, it maintains the same color. I can even move which has a green or success, put it over here, and it also maintains it. Put it here, and when I drag and drop it here, it actually changes the color. And guys, this is how easy it is for us to change the colors when we drag and drop it. So now we can refresh and everything is just gonna be as it is over here. Perfect. All right, guys, so now we are able to change the color of the task card when we drop it on the appropriate column. All right, so at this point, what we want to do is to be able to create tasks right on the Kanban board over here. So we are going to put a text input right on top of this header at the backlog. and that is where we are going to create a task at. Okay, so to do this, I'm just gonna go up to where we have the backlog, and at the very top here, I'm just gonna create a form. Okay, so let me make a comment over here. Okay, so this is where we are going to put the form. So I'm just gonna do form like this, and now we are having a form over here. So the action, we have not created a backend logic to actually create the task. So I'm just going to leave it blank for now. But then we are going to have an ID for this particular form. So you say ID, and this ID is just going to be equal to, so first of all, I'm just going to call it create task form. So create dash task dash form like this. All right, so now that we have this, we also want to be able to attach the project ID to this particular form. So we say data dash project dash ID like this, and that is just gonna be equal to, so we get a project ID, so we do project dot ID like this. Okay, so now that we have this, the method actually is gonna be equal to post. So we say method is equal to, is gonna be a post method. So we say post like this. Okay, so now that we have this, let me zoom out a little bit like that for you to see clearly. Okay, so now that we have this, I'm just gonna go into the form like this, and what we want to do is to add a div. So the div, sorry, so div, and this particular div is just gonna have a class. So the class of the div is gonna be equal to, and we say form dash group like that, dash group like that. Okay. All right, so now let's add an input. So we say input, perfect. So from here, we also want to give it an ID. So the ID is just gonna be the task dash name like that. Okay, so that's how we are going to give it the ID. And then from there, we're gonna give it a name, and then the name is also gonna be equal to name like this. And from there, the next thing we wanna do is to give it a class. So the class of this input is just gonna be equal to, we say form dash control like this, and another class we want to give is called task dash input like that. Okay, so now that we have this, we need to give it a placeholder, and then the placeholder holder is just gonna be equal to, we say new task like this. Okay, so let me make it a capital, new task like this. Okay, so this is just going to be our input. Now let's save changes and then refresh to see what we have. So I'm just going to go here, and then we refresh, and this is what we have over here. Perfect. Perfect. So now if you take a look at this, we have the backlog at the very top here, and then the form or the input is also just here. But we want the text, the backlog, to be at the side of this. So we want to actually align them properly. So what we're going to be doing is, first of all, target the form group class. I'm just going to come into our style, and then down here, I'm just going to do dot form dash group like this, perfect. And now what we want to do is to actually say display, and display is just going to be flex over here. Perfect. So let's save changes, go back, and then refresh. And now we are having this. Now we also want to add a space between the test and then the input. All right, so what we're gonna do is to grab the backlog header. So I'm just gonna do hash and then do backlog like this, and then we want to grab the h3. So we say h3, and then I'm just gonna bring a space like this. And now that we have grabbed this, what we want to do is to say margin dash right, and the margin we are going to give is 10 pixels like this, px like this. Let's save changes and then refresh our application again so that we can get a space between this and that. So refresh, and now we have a margin of 10 pixels in between them. Perfect. Perfect. But now when we enter something over here and then hit on enter, it's actually going to submit this page. So we actually need to prevent the default. Actually, we are not going to use a button to even submit. You're going to use the enter key. but we have to find a way to prevent the default action so that the page is not submitted when you hit on enter. So to do that, we're going to scroll down to our JavaScript. All right, so now that I'm at the bottom of the page, I'm just gonna click here, and this is where this function, the update task status function, ends. So I'm just gonna come down here and then make a comment. So I'm just gonna make a comment submitting form on enter key. So submitting form on enter key, like this. Okay, so now that we have this, we first of all want to get the task form. So I'm just gonna do const, and we say task form like this, and that is gonna be document dot, and what we want to get is get element by ID like this. All right, so the ID is just gonna be equal to, so I'm gonna scroll down to where we have the form and get the ID of this particular form. So at the very top here, we have the ID to be create task form. So I'm just gonna copy it and then scroll down to this particular form where we are getting the form and then paste it here. All right. All right, so now that we have the task form, I'm just gonna copy it and then paste it over here. So I'm just pasting it, and we're gonna say task input. So task input like that. And then the task input you are going to look for is just gonna be the ID of the input here. So we're gonna get task name. That is the name of the ID. So I'm just gonna bring it down and then replace it with this one. Right after this, the next we want to get is const, and that is going to be project ID like this. This project ID is gonna be task form. It's gonna be task form like this dot, and we're gonna get the attribute like this, and then the attribute we want to get is just gonna be data dash project dash ID like this. Okay, so if you scroll up, we have that particular ID over here. So data project ID. So this is what we are actually referencing down here. All right, so now that we have this, the next thing we want to do is to make a condition. So we say if, and before we even go ahead and run our Ajax, we want to check to see if task form and task input and project ID are all present. So first we say task form like this, and if task form is present, and we also have task input like that, and the next one is just gonna be if we also have the project ID. So that is the only time we are going to run our Ajax. So I'm just gonna do this. Inside here, we're gonna say task input like this dot, and we're gonna add event listener now like this. And then the event listener we are going to add is just gonna be key down. So if someone press the key down, okay, and we also gonna say function, and this is actually gonna take event like that. Okay, so we're gonna say if event dot, so if event dot key is equal to enter. So if the enter key is pressed, we say enter. So if it is the enter key that is pressed, then what we're going to be doing is to say event.prevent default. So you say event.prevent default like that. So we are going to prevent the default behavior like that. Okay, let me save changes, and we're going to refresh our page over here. So now we are going to input something over here and then press, and now it's actually prevent the default behavior. So let's even do this. Okay, so what we want to do even at this point is a const, and we want to get the test input, or we want to get a task name. So you say task name like this, and that is just going to be task input like this dot, and we're going to get a value. And after we have had a value, we want to run this function trim to remove all white spaces around this. And now we can just say alert And what we want to alert is just going to be the task name like that. Okay, so let's save changes. And I'm just going to refresh this particular page like that. Let me refresh this page. Okay, and then the task is going to be anything like this. And when we do this, we are getting what we input inside the input like that. Perfect. So everything seems to be working just fine. All right, so at this moment, what we're going to be doing is to write our backend logic to be able to continue with what we are doing. So I'm just going to go into the task views, and inside the task view, I'm just going to create another function. All right, so this function, I'm just going to call it create task agent. So I'm going to do create def, and we say create underscore task underscore ajax like that, ajax like this, and this is actually going to take in request. Okay, so right after this, what we want to do is to make sure we only accept a post request like that. So I'm just going to put it at the very top here. All right, so after we have done this, what we're going to be doing is to get the name of the task. So we say name, and that is going to be equal to, we say request dot post dot get, and what we are going to get is just going to be the name. So name like that. So after we have gotten the name, the next thing we also want to get is a project underscore ID, and the project ID this time around is also going to be request dot post dot get, and instead of getting name, we are going to get project underscore ID. So project underscore ID like that. So this is actually going to give us a project ID and then the name of the task that is inputted into the text input for the task. Okay, so right from here, we also want to get a user, and then the user is just going to be request dot user like that. So now that we have all these things in place, we want to make a condition. So we say if not name. So if not name like that. So if we don't have a name, that means if the user didn't input anything, what we want to do is to return, and what we're going to be returning is just going to be JSON response, and you're going to say success JSON response, and it's just going to be a dictionary. So we're going to say success, and this success is just going to be equal to false at this point. And the next thing is just going to be an error, because if it is not successful, it's just going to have an error. So the error is also going to be, so what we want to display is just going to be task title is required. So task title is required. So at this point, the person is not entering the task title. That is why we are actually giving this particular error. Okay, so from there, we also want to check to see if the project ID is, if there is a project ID. So we say if not project underscore ID, that means the project ID is not found, it's not passed. So we say return, and you're gonna return JSON response, and the error is just gonna be, so I'm gonna just go here and then copy this particular return and then paste it over here, and we're gonna make modifications to it as suited. So the error is just gonna be project ID is required instead of project task title. So I'm just gonna clear this one and say project ID is required. All right, so if all these things are passed, then we want to try. So try, and we also, let me do pass, and then the accept. Then the accept is also gonna be passed like that. Okay, so just so we don't have any errors. But now I'm just gonna take this one out, and we are just going to write our logic. So here we want to get access to the project. So we say project, and the project is just gonna be, so we want to import project at this point. So we say from project dot models import, and we're gonna import project like that. So let me check to see from project.models. Let me come here, and we have, so from projects.models import project. So now we have imported project, and what we're going to be doing next we have now imported project, and we're gonna say project dot objects dot get, and we are going to get the project by ID, and then the ID is just going to be the project ID that has been passed over here. So we have project ID that has been passed from the front end. Now that we have the project ID, we want to go ahead and then create the new task. So let me make a comment and say create task or new task like that. And to create a new task, we're going to say new underscore task is going to be equal to task dot objects dot, and we're going to create it like this, and the variables or the argument we need to pass is going to be name. So name is going to be equal to name, comma, and we also need to pass a project. So a task is supposed to be associated with a project, and that is going to be equal to project like this. And then the next or the last one is just going to be equal to owner, and then the owner, let's check the owner on the model. So owner, task has owner, then the owner is just going to be equal to the user we defined over here. So let me copy and then paste that one over here. So this is actually going to create our task, and once the task is successfully created, we need to return it. So we say return, and we're going to return a JSON response. That is going to be JSON response, and the response we are going to pass first is just going to be the success. So success at this point is just going to be equal to true. So that means it has been created successfully. It's just going to be equal to true like that. And we also want to pass the task ID. So we say task underscore ID. In future, we are going to pass more of these task details, but for now, it's just going to be new task dot ID like that. So this is going to be passed to the front end like that. And once everything is successful, so this is when the task is actually created. But then the except, that is when a project does not exist. Let's say project dot does not exist. If a project does not exist, we want to pass a JSON response. So I'm going to copy this and then paste it over here. But instead of success being equal to true, this time around it's just going to be equal to false. And then we are not going to pass a task ID, but rather we are going to pass an error. So the error is just going to be a project not found. So it's project not found like that. All right, so now let's save changes, and we're gonna go import this one into our model, our URLs. So we're gonna go here, open our urls.py, and we have to import this one. So let me zoom out a bit, bring a comma over here, and then we import this one like that. I'm also gonna toggle the sidebar over here, and I'm just gonna copy this one and then paste it over here. And I'm also going to clear this one over here. All right, so we are not going to have any ID over here. So I'm just going to clear it like that. And what we're going to be doing is to give it a name. The name is just going to be create task agent. So I'm going to do create dash task dash agents like this, like that. And I'm also going to copy this and then use it for the name of the URL. So that is going to be like this. Okay, so I'm just going to save changes and then come back to our Kanban board over here. All right, so this time around, we don't need the alert. I was just trying to check. I was just debugging. That's why I did that. I'm just going to clear it. Just going to clear it like that. Okay, so now we need to make a condition. So we say if, and what we want to check to see is task name. So if the task name exists, then what we are going to be doing is to first of all form the form data, get the form or compose the form data. So we say const and we say form data like this, and that is just going to be equal to new, and we say form data like that, and we're going to pass our task form to it. So I'm just going to copy this task form we have defined over here and then paste it inside of this. Okay, So now we say form data, that's the variable we have defined over here. So let me paste it over here, dot, and we're gonna append. So what we are what we are appending is just gonna be equal to, so we append name, and then the name is just gonna be the task name like that. And we also want to append, so we say form data dot append again, and we are also going to append, that is just going to be the project underscore id. So project underscore id like this, and this project id is just going to be project id over here. Perfect. So I'm just going to bring this, and now that we have this, we actually going to fetch. We are going to use fetch. So we say fetch. What we are fetching, we need to get the URL. So to get the URL, I'm gonna go to where we have our form over here, and so this is going to be our form, and then the action. So inside the URL, I'm just gonna do URL like this, and first we say task because it's a task app, and we also want to get the actual URL. So I'm just gonna go to the URL over here, and then the name is just gonna be task, create task agent. So I'm just gonna go here and then paste create task agents like this. Okay, so now that we have this, we can scroll down to where we are making our fetch, and here we need to get the URL. So the URL is just gonna be task form like this dot, and it's just gonna be the action, comma, and we also need to get a method. So the method is just gonna be the same thing, task form dot, and this time around it's just gonna be method like that. We bring our comma, and we also need to get a body. So the body actually is just gonna be our form data like this, the one that we have composed over here. So we have form data, and we have now appended all these things to it, and then we bring a comma. From there we need to get the headers. So headers, and then the headers is just gonna be, first we need to get a CSRF token. So I'm just gonna do X dash CSRF token like this, and then the value. Okay, so now we need to get a value, but before that, let's do document dot, and we say query selector, and what we want to get is the value for the CSRF token. And the way we can get the CSRF token, let me come here, and I'm just gonna right click over here and go to inspect. So I'm also gonna bring this one up a little bit over here, and once we are here, I'm just gonna click on this to review the details of the form, and I'm also gonna click it again inside the div over here. All right, so at this part, all right, so now we are not seeing the value of the CSRF token, and that's because we have not even added it to our form. So I'm just gonna scroll up to where we have the form over here, and right underneath over here, I'm just gonna bring the CSRF token. So it's a CSRF token like this. Save changes, go back here, and I'm just gonna refresh this page again. Okay, so now we have the form, and we are now seeing input, and then the type is hidden, but then the name is CSRF token, and then the value is just this. Okay, so we need to grab this name. All right, so we're gonna go into our code over here, query selector, and then I'm just gonna bring this and this square bracket. First, we need to access the name, and it's gonna be equal to, so I'm just gonna go back onto our inspector over here, and then I'm just gonna copy this name. So I'm gonna copy it and then paste it over here. So that is gonna be this name, the CSRF token. And right after that, I'm just gonna do dot, and what we're gonna access is the value. So when we come back onto our form, or here, we are going to see dot value, and that is going to get this entire value for us. So we say dot value over here, and I'm just gonna bring my comma over here. And then we also need to tell our server that this is going to be an AJAX request. So we say x dash requested. Okay, and this actually is going to be equal to XML HTTP request like this, like that. So now that we have this, I'm just gonna do dot, and we say then. Okay, so at this point we want to process our response. So it's a response, and this response is just gonna be this. It's a response dot JSON, like that. Okay, so now that we have this, we also need to do dot then, and we're now going to get the data like that. So we can now make a condition. So we say if, and the condition we want to make is data dot success. So that means if it is successful, when you go back into our view, we have if it is successful. So success is equal to true. Then what are we returning? We want to console.log, and what we are going to be logging is we want to say task created successfully. Task created successfully, and we're gonna bring data dot, and that is just gonna be the task underscore ID. So task underscore ID, because the back end is returning task ID at this part. So task dot ID, like that. And I'm just gonna bring this. So here we can now do else. So that is when it is not successful. So we can now do console dot error, and then the error is just gonna be we can do error like this, and I'm just gonna bring a comma and then say data dot error, like that. So this will be coming from the backend. All right, then I'm just gonna come here and then do dot catch, like this, and at this point you're gonna say error. So here I can do console.error, and then we are going to log this particular error. We're going console.error, and then the error is just going to be error creating task, like this, and we're going to bring that particular error. So I'm just going to bring a comma here and then say error, like that. Okay, so let's bring this and that. Okay, so now when you take a look at this part, we made a condition that if task name, so that means if the person actually inputted a name. So when we scroll down, we are going to have this part, and we need to make else. So the else case is just gonna be, we say else like this, and we want to say console.log, and what we are actually going to be logging is going to be task name is empty. That means the person did not input anything. So we say task name is empty, like that, empty like this. Okay. All right, so I'm just gonna bring this one over here, and so if you take a look, we made a condition at the very top here. We need to get the tax form, the tax input, and then the project ID. So I'm just gonna click here to see the end and the closing of this particular one. Okay, so it ends over here. So the if is gonna have an else over here. So the else is just gonna be when there is an error. So one of these is not present, either the tax form or task input, or any of this is not present. We are just gonna get an error. So we want to console log. So console dot error, and then the error is just gonna be, you're just gonna say form. So you're just gonna say form or inputs, or project ID. So project ID like this is not found, like that. So that is just gonna be the error we are going to display, or the message we are going to display, so that we can actually debug our code. All right, so I think we have done everything, but now when we create a task, we need to clear the input over here. So to do that, let's go onto our Kanban board and we scroll down to where we have the success, and where we say created successfully, we need to clear the text input. And to do that, we're gonna do task input like this dot, and the value at this point is just gonna be equal to, we set it to empty like this. And I'm just gonna save changes. We're gonna go also into our URL, and then I realized that when we did a copy and pasting, instead of changing the name of the function, we actually didn't change it. So we're gonna copy the create task. It just, oh sorry, not cut, but copy it like this, and then I'm just gonna paste it over here. So now let's save changes and then go back and then refresh our application. Now, when we try creating a task, we are just gonna run into an error. Let's try to create a task. So I'm saying create. This is impressive. Let's just say this is a name of a task, which is not the name of a task actually. Then I hit on enter. All right, so this is what we are getting. It says project ID requested. So the reason why we are having this error is because when you come to the form data, this is not a column like this. It has to be a comma separated. And we also come here and then we bring another comma. So I'm going to scroll down to where we have the error. All right, so when you come here where we have the catch, we have spelling mistake with the error. So I'm just also going to save it, change it, and then save it like this. All right, so now you can just go back here and then refresh the page again. And I'm just gonna try to create a task. So I'm saying this is my first task from the board. All right, so this actually is still gonna fail. So I'm just gonna click on this, and we are not seeing anything because it's actually trying to prevent default. But then when you come back into the console, we are having an error, and then the error is integrity, so not null constraint field. So tax dot start date and then the due date are all actually not nullable in our model. So when you come to task, let me scroll to where we have tax and click on this. We have what, the start date and then the due date. They are all not nullable. You can't leave them empty. But then when we are creating a task from this part, we don't have the ability to set the start date and then the end date. And that's why we are having this error. So we need a way to pass these ones as null. So I'm just going to come here to where we have the start date and then do null is going to be equal to true, and then blank is also going to be equal to true. True, like that. We come to the due date, because if you don't do it, the next error is just going to be on the due date. So we say null is going to be equal to true, and then blank is also going to be equal to true. Okay, so from here we can just save changes to all the files, and then I'm just going to bring up my terminal and then make migrations. So we're going to say python money.py make migrations, and we wait for migrations to be made. So we wait, and it's actually altering these two fields. Say python money.py migrate. So we want to permanently write these changes to our database, and we hit on enter like that. So we wait for all these things to be migrated, and now migrations have been made. So now that we have successfully made these migrations, I'm just gonna go to our task, refresh, and we still have 5 tasks. But now when we click on or hit on enter like this part is cleared. The input is actually emptied. And when you come here, we still have tasks, 5 tasks. But then when we refresh, you are seeing this is my first task. And now when I do refresh it, we are actually not seeing it over here. And that's because when you come to task and we go to task model manager, let me scroll down task, and we say model manager. We are actually, for the upcoming, we are actually filtering where the due date is greater than or equal to time zone now. but the task we created has no time, start date, and then the due date. So if you scroll down, start date is empty, due date is empty. That's why it's being excluded from our list of tasks on the Kanban board. So I can just set this one to today and set this one to today, and then hit on save. And when we come here, I'm just gonna refresh, and now we are seeing it over here. All right, this is perfect. So all right, guys, so if you found this tutorial very helpful, don't forget to like, comment, share, and I'm just gonna see you in the next video. All right, guys, so now we can create tasks, but just that when we refresh, you are not going to see the task on the Kanban board. Let's try to create this task, for example, and let's do this. And this task is actually created. When you come here, we have 6 tasks, and when you refresh, we have it over here. But now when I refresh, it's not going to show, and that's because in the previous video I explained this due date and then the start date are all empty, and that's why our query is actually filtering it to not excluded. Now it's being shown. But what we essentially want to do is to intentionally include all tasks that are actually created with a due date. Perfect. So when you come into the task model, you're going to realize that we have a model manager over here, the upcoming. This is what is actually filtering those tasks out. So if you take a look at this, the upcoming is actually returning all the tasks where the due date is greater than or equal to now, time zone dot now. But we need to I would intentionally include tasks which has no due date. So I'm just gonna come here and then do, so where we have the dot filter, I'm just gonna come down here and then do models dot, so models dot, and we say q like this, and then I'm just gonna wrap this one over here and then wrap it like that. So this is the first part, that is, and then we're also gonna bring a pipe over here. So essentially what we are trying to do is that the upcoming should actually return where the due date is equal to time zone dot now. So that is where we have tasks that are in the future, and is going to exclude tasks that are in the past, or is also actually going to, so we do models dot q. So we have the q over here like this, and we say where the due date, so due underscore date underscore, we want to pick where the due date is null. So we're gonna do underscore underscore, we say is null. So where is null is equal to true. So our query set is just gonna be returning where the due date is in the future or now. So that means these tasks have not expired. It's not in the past, and or it's also going to filter by where the due date is also now. So this is what we need to make sure when we create a task and we refresh the page, it's going to display right away. So let me check my console to see if everything is working. So it doesn't seem like we have any errors over here, and I need to refresh my page like this, and let me do test task creation like this, and I'm just gonna do this, and now it's created. But instead of we having to change the due date in the admin, I'm just gonna refresh, and now we see it's right over here because our query set is actually including tasks without due date. And to prove that, you go here, refresh, and you're going to see this particular test task creation. When you click on it, you don't have start date and due date, but yet it's still being shown over here. All right, guys, so welcome back. So in our previous video, we were able to create tasks, but these tasks are not actually showing dynamically when we create them. We do not want to refresh the page before the tasks are shown. So in order to do that, first of all, let me move some of these ones here. I just need the backlog to be empty like this. And in order to do this, what we first of all going to be doing is to get hold of the backlog column. And to get hold of the backlog column, let's get it by ID. So I'm just going to scroll to where we have the backlog, and let me also toggle it. Sorry, let me also toggle it like this. Okay, so we have an ID over here. So I'm just going to scroll to where we are actually creating the task. So scroll down, and here is where we are creating the task. So let me make a comment, get backlog column, the column like that. Okay, so now we need to get a column. So I'm just gonna do const, and we're gonna call it backlog column like this. And this is actually gonna be document dot, and we say get element by ID. And this time around, the ID is just gonna be the ID we have copied, the backlog. All right, so this is actually gonna get us the backlog column. Okay, so now that we have this backlog column, I'm just gonna copy it like this and scroll to where we actually create the task successfully. So where we clear the task, I mean the input, that is where we are actually going to append, or we are going to show our task on the backlog column. So let me make a comment over here and say dynamically create the new task. Okay, so new task like this. Okay, so this is what you want to do. So first of all, we need to, let me push it down like this, and so that we have enough space to work with. First of all, I'm just gonna do const, and we need to create a new task card. So we say new underscore task card like this. So this is just going to be document dot, and we create elements. So the element we want to create is just gonna be a div. So we say div like this. So I'm just gonna scroll up to where we have the task for the backlog. So we are first of all creating this particular div. And after we have created this div, we need to add this class. So I'm just gonna copy everything over here and then scroll down. Now the div has been created, but we need to add this particular class. So I'm gonna scroll down to where we created a div, and the next thing we're gonna do is call this new task card. So new task card dot, and we say class list like this dot, and we're gonna add, what we're gonna add is what I have actually copied. So we're gonna add a class called card. So we have card, and another class called secondary, card dash secondary like this. And we also need to add another class called card dash outline. So when you scroll up, you're going to see all that, card dash outline like this. And then the final part is just gonna be another class called task dash card, task dash card card over here. Okay, so I'm just gonna bring this one. So when we scroll down up 1 2 3, so we have 1 2, we have four classes, and when you scroll up, you're going to see all of them over here. So 1 2 3 4, and that is what we have over here. We also need to add another property, so this attribute. So I'm just gonna copy it, and I'm gonna scroll down to where we are adding the classes. And the next thing we're gonna do is to say new task card dot, and we're gonna set attributes like this. And then the attribute we want to set is just gonna be what I have copied over here, the data task ID. And I'm also gonna bring a comma, and the attribute is gonna be, or the value is gonna be data dot task underscore ID. So we are having the data over here, and our backend is actually returning, when the task is created, it's actually returning task ID, which is equal to the new task.id. So we are getting it over here. So let me bring this, and the next thing we want to do is to set the task draggable to be equal to true, so that we can be able to drag it. So we say new task card dot, and what we want to do is say draggable, and we set it to true like this. So this is actually going to allow us to be able to move or drag the newly created task. All right, so having done this, we also want to make a comment, and then the comment I want to make is add the task content. So everything we have done up to this point is creating the div, giving it a class, and giving it the attribute. Then the content within the task is not something that we have actually dealt with. So I'm gonna scroll up again, and like I told you, we created the div and we added the classes and then the attributes over here. But we need to add the task content over here. So I'm gonna copy everything right from here. Let me see if I'm doing the right thing. Perfect. And I'm gonna scroll down to this part. So now we are going to add a task content over here. So to add a task content, I'm just gonna do new task card dot, and we're gonna say inner HTML like this, and this is actually going to be equal to, so I'm just going to do the backtick like this and bring this one over here. Within the backtick, I'm just going to I'm just going to paste everything over here like this. And where we have the tax.name, this actually isn't going to work because this is coming from Django, but we are now working in the JavaScript over here. So I'm just going to remove this right away, and then I'm just going to bring this $sign like this, and after I have brought the $sign, I'm just gonna do this and then close it like this. Within this, I'm just gonna pass the task name like that, task name like this, which is coming from this part. Okay, so we have the task name over here. So the for loop dot counter is actually coming from the Django loop, and it's also not gonna work, so I'm just gonna take out that one for now, and everything seems to be perfect. So this is going to be our inner HTML. Right after we have had our inner HTML, the last part is just going to be appending the newly created task to the backlog column. Okay, so let me make a comment and say, sorry, let me make a comment and say append newly created task to backlog column like that. Okay, so now that we have made this comment, we want to actually do const, and what we're going to be doing is backlog like this task list. Okay, so this is actually going to be equal to the backlog column we defined at the very top over here. So let me copy that over here, scroll down to this part, and we do dot query selector like this. So what we are going to be selecting from this particular column is just going to be a class, and this class is just going to be the dot task dash list like that. So before we even do the for loop on the backlog column, so here, before we even did the for loop, we have this particular div, and the div has a class of task dash list, and this actually contains all the tasks that have the status of backlog. So we are looping through all this within this particular div. So this is what we have selected, and it's just going to be containing a list of tasks, and we want to append it. That's why we are actually selecting that particular div or class. And now that we have access to this div, we now need to append it like this, and we're going to say, so I'm just going to copy this and then do dot, and instead of doing append, we want to put it at the very top. So we do prepend like this, and we are going to prepend a new task card like that, and this is actually going to put it at the very top. Okay, so before we even go ahead and then test our application, we also need to add a drag and drop listener to the newly created task. So what I'm going to do is to make a comment and say add drag and drop listener to the newly created task like this. Okay, so to do that, we are going to do new task card like this dot add, and we're gonna do add event listener like this. And then the event listener we want to add, the event is just going to be drag start. So we say drag start like this. So drag start. And when we start the dragging, we bring a comma and we bring on the event like this. So like E. And now we can do E dot data transfer dot set data, and the data we want to set. And first we're gonna say text dash / plain, and we want to set it. And now we do new task card dot data set like this dot, and we're gonna do task ID like that. So I'm just gonna bring this and also bring this over here. So I think this is everything that we need to do. So let me save changes, check to see if the terminal is running. Everything seems to be running. I'm also gonna refresh, and now we don't have any tasks over here. So what I'm gonna do is to say create first task, and now it is actually displaying right away, and we also have the ability to drag and drop it over here. So let me try to create, and this is the first one, and then the second one is just going to be this, and it's actually going to put it at the top instead of the down, and this is what we have over here. Perfect. Guys, if you find this tutorial very helpful, don't forget to like, comment, share, and I'm just going to see you in the next video. Bye bye. All right, guys, so welcome back. So now we have the ability to create tasks on the Kanban board, and these tasks that we create are actually automatically displayed on the backlog column. So let's try to do something like this and do hey task, and it's actually created. But the problem with this one is, first of all, the numbering is not being shown dynamically created at the JavaScript, but what we have here is coming from Django, and Django for loop is working, but it's not going to be working over here. So when we refresh it, it's actually going to fix everything. So we actually need to deal with it so that when we create a task right away, it's just going to display it even with the correct number, And the newly created task is always going to have a number of 1. And once it has the number of 1, it has to number all these ones to adjust to it. Okay, so to do that, we first of all have to go into the backlog column. I'm going to scroll to the very top here, and where we have the for loop counter, we're just going to take it away. So I'm just going to delete this one right away over here. It's not going to exist anymore, but I'm going to be adding a class, and this class is just going to be task dash counter over here. All right, so I'm just going to copy this. This is when we are doing the Django for loop. All right, so when you're loading the page, Django is gonna, when we are loading the page from the back end, this is what we have over here. Then I'm gonna scroll down to where we are dynamically creating the task when we create it on the Kanban board. So we have this one over here. So I'm just gonna take this one out like this, and also put this class over here. Now that we have done this, I'm just gonna save changes, and when we refresh, all this numbering, even from Django side, is just gonna be gone. It's not there. And when we create a task like this, it's also not gonna come with any task, but we are going to fix it. Okay, so I'm just gonna scroll down to this part. Okay, so at the very bottom of the page, I'm just gonna make a comment, and I'm just gonna do function to update task counter. So this is function to update task counters like that. So it's actually going to be specifically for the backlog counters. It's not going to be for all the other ones, because they are just not, we are only dealing with when the task is created. Okay, so now I need to create a function. So the name of the function, I'm just going to do function, and the name is just going to be update task counters. Let me do capital C, counters like this, and this is not going to take any arguments like that. Okay, so now that we have this, we need to get the task cards from the backlog column. So we're going to do const, and we say task cards. I'll do cards like this, and that is just going to be equal to backlog column over here. Sorry, backlog column over here dot, we say query selector or, so we want to select everything from the backlog column, but what we're going to be selecting is just going to be the dot task dash cars like this. So when we go to the card like this, so when you go to the backlog column, we are going to select everything with the class of this. Sorry, so let me put this one, cut it here, and then paste it inside of this. So when we go to the backlog column, I'm gonna go to the backlog and we scroll down to where we have the task dash list. Inside the task dash list, we have where we are looping through, we have task dash card. So this is actually referring to the individual tasks that are shown inside of the task list for the backlog column. All right, so I'm going to scroll down, and these are the tasks we have actually selected over here. All right, so now we have the task cars. So task. All right, so now that we have the task cars, I'm going to come here and then do task cars like this. And I'm just going to do dot for each. So here, I'm just going to wrap it like this. And what we're going to be doing is we need to get the individual card, because this is going to be a list of tasks on the backlog. And we also, once it's going to be a list, we also need to get the index like that. And after we have gotten the index and then the card, we need to do this. And then I'm just going to bring this like this. Perfect. So now we want to define a task counter. So we say const, and it's going to be task counter like this. And now that we have the task counter variable defined, the next thing we're going to need to do is a card. So for this particular card dot, and we need to get, so query selector and query selector dot, and now we need to get the elements with the class called task counter. So it's a task dash counter like this. So if you want to have a look at it, we see where we are dynamically creating, we need to get this href, which has a task counter. And when you scroll to where we are rendering from the back end, we also have the task counter. So that is what we are actually going to get. So now we are going to get the href like that. And now that we have the href, the next thing we want to do is to make a condition. So we say if, because it may not exist, it may exist. So we want to check to see if it actually exists. So we're going to say if task counter. So if it exists, then we need to actually say task counter dot, and we say test content like this. We need to get it, we need to set the test content. So task counter dot test content, and that is actually going to be equal to, so I'm just going to bring the backtick like this, and also bring this one, and inside it, first of all, we need to show a hash like how we are showing it on the template. So we have hash, we also need to show a hash over here. And after we have shown the hash, we need to bring this $sign, and the next is just gonna be, let me wrap this one like this, and we need to get the index that has been passed over here. So the index is just gonna give us the number on the list, and we need to actually add +1 to it. And then I'm just going to bring this one over here. So now that we have actually defined this, we need to call it even on page reload. When we refresh the page or when we load the page, we need to call this one over here. So I'm just going to make a comment and say, and now that we have this, I'm just going to call it like that. Perfect. And this is not the only place you are going to call it. We're also going to call it when we successfully create a task on the Kanban board. So after we have prepended, so we actually prepended, and we also need to call it over here like that. So I'm just gonna make a comment let's make a comment, updating task counter like this. Okay, so now let's save changes and then refresh our application. So I'm gonna refresh it like this, collapse this part, and now we are not seeing anything. All right, so it doesn't seem to be working, and that's because when you come into our code, first the task counter is a class, so we bring a dot over here, and also when you scroll down to and where we are making the condition, checking to see if the task counter exists, we said task counter dot test instead of content. There was a typo, we made it test context, so it has to be content because there's no property like that, like context. So let's save it, and we're gonna come back here and then refresh our application. So now we are seeing the correct task numbers, and then we are going to create a new task. So we say new task, and the moment I hit on enter, this new task should be added and it should have a number of 1, and all these ones should be adjusted accordingly. So I'm gonna do this, and now new task has a number of 1 and the rest have been adjusted accordingly. Perfect. All right, guys, so if you found this tutorial very helpful, don't forget to like, comment, share, and I'm just gonna see you in part 7. Bye bye.